I have had a reading hyperfocus. So the past 2.5 months-ish, I have devoured a lot of books. The final number, excluding DNFs, is 25 books. This is not normal for me. I don't read this much. In fact, I haven't read books regularly over the past, 2 or 3 years. I mean, I did read here and there, but nothing like this, guys. This is not normal. And actually, it's also kind of dying off. It was, as hyperfoci go, an intense period of books. And I couldn't be stopped. That's also the reason I started making videos, because I just wanted to talk about them. I mean, I didn't make the videos expecting them to get any views. Although if you watched any of my videos, thanks for watching. But really the purpose of me posting videos is because I just had an intense need for discussion, or not really discussion, let's be honest, more like monologuing. I just wanted to talk about the books that I was reading. I don't have that motivation anymore. It died. I'm still reading, but nowhere near the pace I had before. I think I finished one book every 3 days, or even shorter, depending on the length of the actual thing. That's not where I'm at now. I'm more casual about it. Thank God, because I really did not have a life. I was either reading, filming, or whatever. Anyway, that's why I got a reading journal. And that's what this video is gonna be. It's gonna be me recording all the books I read in this journal. So I filled a few things out already, just to keep track, but I didn't actually record my thoughts. I got this off Temu, so it has the corny "my life began when I opened a book." I wouldn't say that, but okay. Yeah, so I already did the work and put in the books that I've read as of this date, which is the 29th of October, 2025. These are all the books that I've finished. I'm currently reading... This is so ridiculous, but I think I'm reading 5 books right now. 2 of them I'm reading with other people. One of them being Conform with Fern and Ezra. We just have a little group chat going on. We might do a little event once we finish the book, whenever. And the other book being Bully, which I'm doing for a Fine Literature Hour with Ezra. That's when we just read each other chapters and have live reactions toward it. The other 3 is Notice. I don't actually know what the author's name is, but the book is called Notice. It's about this young woman who becomes a prostitute. It's very dark and very moving. I found that book because I was looking at Kate Elizabeth Russell's Goodreads profile, and that was somehow in her shelf. And I'm like, okay, if she likes that book, and since I loved My Dark Vanessa, it could be a book that I'm interested in. And I'm also reading Look Closer by David Ellis, which is just your regular thriller. I haven't finished that one yet. And I also started Hunting Adeline, but in German. I'm pretty sure I'm going to DNF that book, though. I started a reading vlog for Hunting Adeline in German, spoken in German, but even in German, I cannot read that book. I'm just so bored and I hate it too much, but I will probably upload it because it's fun. I was practicing the language. Anyway, back to what this video is. As you guys can see, these are the 25 books that I've finished, and the way this video is going to work is that I'm going to film everything chronologically, but later on I'm going to edit it in such a way that it's split into genres. So if you're not really interested in, dark romance, you don't have to watch that part of the video. But I would still recommend it, because why the fuck not? Broaden your horizons. That's what I did during this reading hyperfocus. I started reading shit that I'm normally not interested in, and I found some books that I thought were good. The biggest discovery I made during this phase was that literary fiction is kind of fun. At least the dark literary fiction. That's what I discovered. And then you can actually even see when I discovered it, which I think it started with Sisters by Daisy Johnson. I did a video on that, and then I thought, this is kind of good. So then I started researching all the other books that I thought could be interesting, that have the tag that I usually avoid, which is literary. And pretty soon after that, I found pretty great books. I'm not quite sure what my statistics are, which, by the way, we'll also get into that, my Storygraph statistics. I even branched out into fantasy. I really don't like fantasy, I have to say. And that was primarily because of Alchemised. I wasn't interested in it because it was fantasy. I was interested in it for the lore. Also have a video. I'll try to link the videos in the appropriate segments. What I'm trying to say is, in summary, I branched out quite a bit, and I'm happier for it. But before I end this part of the video, there's something very important I have to do to this lovely journal. With the order of this from Temu, I found the most, oh my fucking god, awesome sticker ever. Temu is fucking unhinged, and I love it. And I'd like to stick a little Daddy Pedro Pascal on this thing. Who knows, maybe I'm gonna make it like a tradition that at the start of every video like this, I'm just gonna stick a new unhinged sticker on here. I don't know, I'm kind of a dork, but who cares? Ooh. How in the hell? I think I know. Ooh, ooh, I don't want to ruin it. There. Ooh, ooh. Let me just put that there. Oopsie. Where do I stick it? I don't like completely center things because I want some asymmetry, but I'll stick it around here in this corner. Oh my god, he is so beautiful. All right, let's switch screens into the stats. Okay, so here we are in my reading stats on Storygraph. I was very diligent. I updated immediately when I read something, sometimes multiple times a day. So these are about as accurate as this website allows it to be for now. Because as I said, my reading focus was slowly dying. So I've been lazy the last, I don't know, 5 books. Anyway, I started reading. Let me check my reading journal right now because I have it in there. So officially, my reading Hyperfocus started on the 15th of August, 2025. And that's also when I registered for this website. So since then, I completed 25 books, read 7,000 pages, and listened to about 46 hours of audiobooks. My average reading time is 7 days, but again, I think the statistic might be skewed because I started the Parfum very early on in my reading journal, and then I kind of like ditched it because I was actually physically reading it in German, and it's a classic, and my German is not as good as my English, and it just required so much brain power that I thought it was slowing me down. I ended up switching into the audiobook, and that made the text, oh my god, so good, really alive. The audiobook with Hans Korte. I know it's kind of pointless to recommend a German audiobook to an English-speaking audience, but if you happen to speak German, please get that audiobook. It was, oh god, it made the story. But what I'm trying to say is the statistic is a little bit skewed because I finished a couple of books that I started very early on. I think before I finished the Parfum, my average time to finish was something insane like 3, sometimes 2 days. And again, I keep on saying this is not normal for me, guys. I take my time reading books. This is just a very specific state of mind I was in during this period of reading. As you guys can see, yo girl is dark, tense, and mysterious. It's not a surprise to me, and for those who know me, I don't think it's a surprise for them either, that these are the majority of books that I consume. Dark being the biggest category with 17 frigging books. Although there's some overlap here in this, like, of course, a book can be dark, and I don't fucking know, tense too. Dark is my biggest category. Tense, the second thing, I'm a slut for tension, obviously. But you know, I also like a dark, slow read. Anyway, I'm over-explaining this. These are my moods. So apparently my preferred pace is medium. Of course, we love an average. But if I had to choose between slow and fast, I prefer fast. I think that also tracks with, you know, I love thrillers and all that. And those tend to be more fast-paced. But I'm not completely averse to slow-paced books, apparently. The average page number per book is less than 300. I think this is because I discovered literary fiction and I consumed so many books that would qualify as lit fic, and those tend to be more compact books, so that makes sense. I got exactly one book that's over 500 pages, and I know which book that is. That's Alchemized. That thing was a tome. It had like 1,000 pages on print, and on my Tolino, or my e-reader, it had like something insane, like 2,000 pages. And then we've got the average novel length, which is only 3 books. So I probably only finished this many books because most of them were short. Yeah, it's a bit skewed, but whatever. A finished book is a finished book. Later on in this reading phase, I couldn't focus anymore. I couldn't just sit down and read. So what I usually do then is I listen to audiobooks while I'm cleaning the house or whatever. Or I really got into coloring while listening to audiobooks at like 2 a.m. And the majority are around 8 to 15 hours. So I think that's like your average length audiobook. They're not short ones. And I had one really short one in there too that was 8 hours. I think that was Morning Glory Milking Farm. That was a pretty short book. Which, by the way, I loved that book. Here we can see that I mostly read fiction, with the exception of one, that is Spare by Prince Harry, that I listened to as an audiobook because I just couldn't resist when it said that he read it himself. Let's look at the genres. Are we surprised? My most read genre is horror, and the following is erotica. Because your girl actually really likes erotic horror. Although I have to say that this is probably all the dark romance that I read as a palate cleanser throughout this reading period. It's followed by thrillers, also makes sense, and then literary. So I think the winning genre in this reading period is literary horror and dark romance because, you know, I was shopping around, see, and to cleanse my palate, I would always pick up a dark romance book for a hate read. Not always a hate read. I think I found one dark romance book that I liked, and it was an old school one. I had 4 books that qualified as fantasy? I can only remember one, which was Alchemized. The rest I DNF'd. Oh no, Morning Glory Milking Farm is technically fantasy. So that's 2. I don't actually know what the other 2 books are, but I'll find out once this video is done. Oof, 3 classics? I only remember reading The Perfume. Oh, it must have been The Collector. Well, we'll see, as I said. I'm fascinated. I did check these stats out as I was going along, but this is the first time I'm having a closer look at them. Yeah, memoir, that's Spare, for sure. One short story collection, yeah, that's Rejection. Right, so my preferred format, this is an error. Yeah, my preferred format has been digital books because I received a new e-reader not too long ago, and then that just like fueled the fire of my hyperfocus. So the majority of books are digital, a few audiobooks, and I think this is an error. Let me check that. No, I did not read Story of the Eye as a paperback. Let me edit that actually. Look at that. That's more accurate. My most read authors. Apparently, I didn't read much from the same author. Of course, because I was shopping around and finding new authors and shopping around in genres too. But apparently, I read 2 books by Anne Owen, which is the pen name of Nina Pinacci. Those 2 books were like a series of novellas. Slave for Revenge, I think the series was called. That was very in the beginning of my reading hyperfocus, so that's why she has 2. And we've got Agostina Basterica, who wrote Tender is the Flesh, and I think fairly recently published another book, The Unworthy. So those are the 2 repeat offenders, if I can call them that. Language is majority English, and I have 1 German book, which is The Perfume. I don't really enjoy reading German fiction. There's just something about the language. Prior to The Perfume, at least, my impression was that there's something about the language that is just not my cup of tea. And there's something about how German stories are told that, you know, kind of bores me. But again, exceptions prove the rule. The Perfume was fucking magnificent. It is one of my favorite books of all time. I already know it. And because of that book, I'm actually more open now into reading what modern German literature is out there. I'll probably film those videos in German. You know, I know there's like a book community in Germany too. So, you know, they have like a different vibe in my opinion. They don't have the American or English-speaking vibe toward books. Take that with a grain of salt, because I'm actually not really a part of German Bookish Girl Club. Ooh, the number of books, pages, and minutes. It's so interesting. You can literally see how things just escalated with me. So it started off pretty slow around August. I was just like, granted, I started mid-August, but like, holy shit. So apparently in October, I read 15 books. That's insane. 15 books. Oh my God. I read 3,000 pages in October? Girl, like, my fucking professor couldn't force me to read that many academic papers. Jesus Christ. And, around 3,000 minutes. So yeah. Ooh, here we have the average ratings. So my average rating is 3.27, but my most common rating is 4 stars. So the way I employ this scale is I don't use 0 stars because it skews the average. I know I'm being such a fucking nerd about this. 1 star is it's utter shite. There's nothing redeemable about it, but I still finished it. I don't rate DNF'd books. There are various reasons why I would still finish a 1-star book. Maybe it's classic. Maybe, I don't know, the prose wasn't so bad, but I think the story was shit. 2 stars is if I thought it was below average, didn't hate it as much. 3 stars is smack dab in the middle, average book. Actually, the reason why I have so little 3 stars is because if I think a book is too average, then why the fuck am I reading it, right? There's no intense emotion in there. So my most common rating is 4 stars. It's usually those type of books that I picked up. I thought like, yeah, they're good, but they're not really amazing. You know, they're good enough. 5 stars is obviously, oh my God, I was so fucking hooked. I loved everything about it. I mean, the book could still have its issues here and there, but there's just something about the way the story was told or the way the conflict was set up or the prose that made me love it. I think I can describe it with I ditched my author brain for a second there and just enjoyed the book. And those were 2. So obviously the first one being The Perfume and the second one being Comfort Me with Apples. Just loved that book. I know it's like, I think it's been discussed on the internet, at least in the section of BookTube that likes literary fiction, and not everybody likes it, but I did. I thought the book set up a vibe like a motherfucker, and that was the first time I read a book solely for vibes and not for plot, because I really liked how the prose was. I was just like, what the fuck's going on? But I kind of get it, but also not. Anyway, more on that later. The 1 stars I don't actually remember, forgettable, and also bad. So if I were to think about it, 1 star is forgettable and also bad. 3 stars is forgettable, but not so bad. 4 stars is great, but not as good. And 5 stars is holy shit. I need to buy a physical copy of this book. So those are my stats. Insane looking back. It didn't feel that way. It didn't feel like I read that many books, but such is the nature of being hyper-focused. And yeah. Let's get into the actual books that I read. Let's talk about Lemonade by Nina Pinacci. This is a historical dark romance, and it's about a young woman in Victorian England called Anna Champion, who is described as maybe not the prettiest girl in town, but she doesn't think much of society and its etiquette. She's very headstrong and independent and all that. During one summertime ball, she meets the dashing Christopher Davenport, the new guy in town, and they don't hit it off at all. It's an enemies to lovers story because Christopher, who is a ruthless con artist, has come to Anna's town because he wants revenge, and he's decided that Anna would be the perfect pawn in his grand plan. So I think I would summarize this book as, what if Mr. Darcy were evil? According to Storygraph, it has 451 pages. It took me 15 days to finish this book. So this was actually the first book I picked up in this reading period. This was actually a reread. I picked this book up, I don't know, maybe a year or 2 ago because I was prowling the dark romance subreddit, and this book was repeatedly cited as the thing that got people into the genre. It was published 2011. For me, it qualifies as a dark romance classic. And by classic, I mean that this is a book that qualifies as dark romance, but was published way before the social media book boom. And usually I like those dark romance books more. I feel like modern dark romance is just too fucking pornified. I can't take it seriously. There seems to have been a time where dark romance was actually more realistic and more kinky. Dark romance nowadays, I feel like, is so vanilla and just, just porn. I don't have a problem with women gooning or whatever. It's just my reason for picking up dark romance is, forgive me, the darkness, and not really the smut. And nowadays, dark romance is mostly smut, which, get it, girl, but it does make it harder to me to find what I want. But let's get into the actual nitty-gritty of my opinion. I gave this book 2 stars on readability. For me, readability is how easy is it to read. So this doesn't really have to do with the quality of the prose, more if it's hard to follow and very, in German you would say zäh, just dry and not entertaining, or weird way of phrasing things that make you reread the same sentence 5 times to understand it. That's what readability is to me. So 2 stars, it would have like lines in parentheses in which third person deep gets broken and suddenly it's like this, I wouldn't describe it as an omniscient narrator, more like as if a voice were talking to the main characters. It just broke immersion, and it's so fucking weird to put it in parentheses. Granted, this was translated from Italian, and I don't think the translation was good. Actually, now that I think about it, it was readable, but it was just so clunky, in my opinion, or so awkward. So that's why 2 stars. The plot I also gave 2 stars. I would say it's a very generic romance/revenge plot, so it didn't reinvent the wheel. It was very predictable. In an odd way, I think this could be a comfort read, because it has everything you want in a romance. Sure, the middle part of the story is a little bit darker, but it's not really that dark. The writing, I gave 1.5 stars. The writing is not good, but the thing is, at this point, I've seen things. Terrible things. Here's the thing about horrible writing. It kind of has a floor effect. There are still stages to how bad a 1 star is. For me, this book is not 2 star because it's too far away from what I would consider average writing, but it's also not completely 1 star. And I gave it half a star because I'm not quite sure if it's the translation or what. Characters, I gave 1 star because they're not thought out. They're very predictable. There is one, I guess, unpredictable thing toward the end. But is it really unpredictable? If you've read the book, you know what I mean. Overall, my rating for this book is 2 stars. It's not abysmal enough for me to give it 1 star, but it's not really that good. I would still qualify it as bad. But the thing about Lemonade is, I knew what was coming. I knew there was a scene in there that would interest me. For those who don't know, there are 2 sex scenes in this, and those sex scenes are not consensual. One is completely undebatable freaking rape, and the other is more on the dubious consent side. And here's the thing, the way non-consent and dubious consent is portrayed nowadays in modern dark romance is absolute dog shit. At least the way it was written here was better. It wasn't good, but it was better. So that's why I gave it 2 stars. Right, so I wrote here that I think the prose is try hard. There was an attempt to make the voice period accurate, but I don't think the attempt was good. But it wasn't bad enough for me to put the book down. It wasn't completely cringeworthy or anything like that. I just thought it was awkward. And speaking about those controversial scenes, I think they were okay. There's internality in there, which is not always the case in modern dark romance. It's not completely pornified, where there's like ludicrous dirty talk. So after I finished this book, I actually thought maybe Nina Pinacci improved over the years. I think the story actually works best if you imagine it in a Bridgerton-esque reality. And then I think the story is actually fun. Since happily ever afters are a huge topic in the dark romance subreddit, I feel like I can tell you guys if this book has a happy ending, but I'll give you guys 3 seconds before I do, so you can skip or whatever. So this book has a happy ending, which is the biggest reason why this book didn't reach 3 stars for me. Because I think a classical romantic happy ending in dark romance is fucking ridiculous. So, do I like this ending? And that's a resounding fuck no, I don't. But the other question is, would I recommend this book? I would, actually. It's a light read. I know people think a light read means that the conflicts aren't intense and that you don't get disturbed or whatever, but we're talking about a horror light read where it's not really that disturbing. There are dark topics in there, and I guess they're explored somewhat, but not really. You won't get disturbed. It won't broaden your horizons or anything. It's pretty dramatized. So if you're up for something like that, sure, I'd recommend this book. Let's talk about The Deal by Anne Owen, which is the pen name of Nina Pinacci. So I actually read 3 books from her since she publishes under 2 names. Anyway, this is a dark historical romance. It's a novella. It only has 112 pages. This is actually a series of novellas. There's a total of 5. Each novella doesn't have its own self-contained plot. It's more like you're watching a Netflix mini-series or something. In fact, I actually think this book is just imagine Bridgerton standard of realism, but darker. So the premise of this book is a very dark romance. So a girl's family is facing financial ruin, and she has a stepbrother who recently became an earl, and now the female main character is asking him for financial help. The stepbrother says yes, under the condition that she becomes his slave. So it's some kinky fuckery in this book, and it's super fun. I wouldn't say it's really dark. As I said, you just have to imagine Bridgerton, but like, a shade darker. It's still kind of cute. Anyway, I picked up this book because I actually like Lemonade, and I wanted to see how much Anne Owen / Nina Pinacci improved, because this was published 4 years later in 2015, as I said. Or did I? I forget. Anyway, I actually really like how this author writes darker sex scenes. There's just more, I don't know, internality and emotional quality to it that modern dark romance doesn't have. So that's why I picked up this book. My general impression is 3 stars. I originally rated it 3.5 stars, but I think 3 stars is more appropriate. And plus, this journal doesn't have 0.5. So I was forced to pick between 4, which seemed too high, and 3, so I picked 3. And I thought it was fun. It was such a fun book. And I was actually scandalized during the sex scenes, and not a lot of authors can do that with me. And I think it's more of a mixture of good tone setting and establishing what the reader can expect from your story, and then doing things that the reader wouldn't expect you to do. So then I was like, oh my god, did he really say that? That's insane. I'd be like giggling a little bit. Also, the romance is done really well. Like, I was invested in the main couple in a way you are with the romance books. So it's a little bit giggly. As I said, very Bridgerton. I would say the author has definitely improved over 4 years. Lemonade wasn't translated by the author. This one is. So there's that. But after having said that, I gave it a 2.5 stars for readability because there are still grammatical errors in there and weird phrasing of things. I think the author was trying to emulate a Victorian character voice, and it wasn't done very well. But then again, the story was so much fun that I really didn't care. Plot, I gave 3 stars. Nothing very interesting in this one, or nothing completely refreshing. It's a very average romance plot that's a shade darker, which is fun, as I said. Writing is 2 stars. Well, if I think about why I gave it this rating, it's more that 3 stars just felt too much. It's not what I would call average. It's 1 star below. Characters, however, I gave 3.5 stars. I almost want to make it 4, but I don't think I will, because the character that carries this entire story for me is Guy, who is the male main character. If I were to describe him, he's kind of like a dude bro in Victorian England. Like, he's sometimes very sarcastic, but oh god, it just works for his voice. Sure, he's a dick, but it's more of a, like a beautiful bastard, that trope, where, oh my god, he's such a piece of shit, but you kind of love him. At least I did. He's kind of like a rascal. The female main character was bland and more obviously a stand-in for the reader. This author shines in particular with her male main characters, who sure follow a certain formula, but it's a fun one, so I'm okay. At least here he's funnier. And to demonstrate that, here are some quotes. These are quotes during the spice scenes, and the author can write a spice scene. At least it's above average, or it's above average when thinking of modern dark romance in ways of internality and such. So I was invested in it. I was just like, oh my god, so naughty. And then Guy would say something like this: what a magnificent moment. What a magnificent arse. It's kind of like sarcastic. And then another one: Perfect position, divine position. If God fucked, he did it that way. In German, you would say he's frech, which is naughty, but like in a childish way. Anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed his voice. And one thing that I also really enjoyed is that I think the sexual tension was set up really well here. Like, it's been a while since I wanted the main pairing to be alone in a book. And when they are, I'm like excited because I know some shit's about to go down. I had it with this book, which is fun. As I said, this book was just fun. But I wouldn't say this book is really dark romance like we know today. I think the trauma is kept at a minimum. So it still has this, oddly enough, this lighthearted vibe to it. It seems like a naughty little read, if you will. So, did I like the ending of this book? This book does end, but it doesn't have an ending. So not one that concludes the entire story. It's more to sequel bait, I guess. But I did like the ending because I was excited to pick up the next one. Would I recommend this book? I would. If you want something fun to read. Indeed, I thought this book was so much fun that I immediately picked up the next one, which is Ashbourne House. Again, this is 115 pages, published in 2015, yada yada. It's from the same series. It's the second book, obviously. This one I also gave 3 stars, although my original rating was 2.5. So I thought it was too good to be only 2 stars. It was still fun. Much of my ratings are the same, so I'm just gonna skip over the details. I think the book maintains its tone. But what made me stop reading this series is that suddenly the main conflict of it all, which is, if I were to explain the kink within this story, it's master-slave, where the slave is unwilling and being forced into it, right? So there I was thinking, oh my god, write me a story where the female main character submits to the kink or never submits to the kink. So it's all about the kink. Do I want it? Do I not want it? So the main conflict is, to put it bluntly, the consent thing. But what ended up happening, is this even a spoiler? I don't think if you were interested in this book that this will spoil it. But what ended up happening with that conflict is that the female main character just, in my opinion, suddenly becomes this horny woman who's okay with everything now, with being a slave. There was no build up to her being that. She just suddenly is. And I was like, but what happened? You skipped the juicy part, the drama of it all. And now she's okay with it somehow. At least that's how it read to me. So that made me bored. Oh, I wrote here, Guy attends Eton, which is the same school Prince Harry attended. Because I read Spare too. So in general, the story is super camp still. It's totally outrageous, but it's fun. It's totally consistent, which I appreciate. I wrote here in my notes that I rewatched my video of this and I was surprised by how careful I was phrasing things. Yeah. And I wrote here, I guess I was nervous about people judging me for my tastes. We love growth because now I don't give a shit anymore. These are the books I like. And if you don't like them, that's good. If you do, welcome. Right. So I have a quote here because at some point this book focuses on the relationship between Guy and the female main character's father. And just to demonstrate this character's voice, here's something he said about his stepfather, I guess, who is more of a sentimental guy who loved his first wife and also loved his second wife. And he was kind of like saying how much he did. And then Guy's internal monologue is, ladies and gentlemen, here is love with a capital L. According to Charles Hartwell, of course. Guy rolled his eyes. Damn the world, he knew it would come to this. When one doesn't get laid, one gets sentimental. He's just such a fun character. I might actually pick up the 3rd book if I need a light read and I'm in the mood for this more campy story. Because at least I know Guy's going to be entertaining. Did I like this ending? I guess I did. Even though I was bored because the conflict of the dynamic of the main pairing kind of went in that direction that I thought was boring, but the ending was fine. Would I recommend this book? I still would, really. I think most books that I've read I would recommend, unless it was an absolute hate read. But most books that I read weren't hate reads, thank fuck. Next book, let's talk about Captive in the Dark by C.J. Roberts. This one has 276 pages and was published 2011. So it's an older, darker romance. Dare I say it's also a classic because I found this in the dark romance subreddit as well. There was just this one post that said that it was looking for older dark romance books. So I finished this book within 3 days. It was good. I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. It is part of a series. The premise of this is fairly typical. It's about a girl that gets kidnapped by a guy. So it's captor-captive, and the kink is master-slave. So that's what I thought when I read the blurb. But the thing is, because this is an older book, I had faith that it would be different than what is published today, obviously. So, again, not what dark romance has become today. And honestly, I was so surprised. This book is fucking kinky. It is kinky in the best way, which is it delves into the psychological aspect of a kink, as in there are certain thoughts that I think not kinky people or vanilla people wouldn't find arousing, but if you have a kink, they kind of excite you. I mean, that is the definition of a kink, right? Usually not sexualized topics or things are sexualized for you. So that's what you find here. There are many examples of this in the book. That's what I mean with the prose is fucking kinky, guys. Like, I don't even share the kink that's depicted here, but I could smell it. So it had like an old school flavor to it, like in The Secretary, the difference between The Secretary and 50 Shades of Grey. So this book is more like The Secretary, not plot-wise, but like on the level of how kinky it is and what is kinky. So that's why I gave this 4 stars. And what I really liked about this is that it delves into the conflict that I think I have come to expect when BDSM is on page or diegetic. Diegetic, I'm not sure if I can get this right. I borrowed this term from Ferret, but diegetic means that the BDSM is in the story. They are practicing BDSM, and non-diegetic is, this book is obviously kinky, but it's not saying that it's kinky. It's more a situation that is meant to be seen as sexual, but not really acknowledged as BDSM in the story. I hope that makes sense. So this story is diegetic, but I would even call it half diegetic because it's the same thing as in Ashbourne House and in The Deal. It's a master-slave dynamic where the slave is unwilling. And the thing that this book does that those 2 books didn't is that I have the plotline that I wanted, which is the conflict is about giving in to the kink. So Olivia, the girl who gets kidnapped, is struggling with herself because, this ludicrous situation, this outrageous situation, she got kidnapped and is about to be sold into human trafficking. And she finds it kind of hot. So it's a lot of turmoil about that, her dark sensuality, if you will. So it did it really well. So the main focus of this book is that master-slave dynamic and exploring it and submitting to the kink and whatever. And there is an external plot in there, but it's secondary. It's like in the later half of the book. And to be honest, when the story shifted from the master-slave dynamic into the actual plot, I was kind of sad that it was over. Because I lost interest. It kind of got boring because I'm like, oh no, now the story is moving on. I would read this story as a sexual fantasy in a way that I could imagine something like this being role-played in an actual BDSM dynamic, with 2 consenting adults. So that's why it was titillating. And this is a deeply erotic book, but it hardly has any sex scenes. Sure, the main character is mostly undressed and there is whatever else, but there's no smut. There's, I think, only 1 sex scene. And that was mostly glossed over because I don't think that's what the book is about. What Caleb, the kidnapper, wants from Olivia, the kidnappee, he wants to train her. So he's like a professional master. He wants to train her and sell her into human trafficking as a slave, right? So that's the thing. And as he's training her, they kind of fall in love. And he is not meant to have sex with her. There is a scene that's penetrative sex. And I felt like that should have been highlighted because it's like a moment, but it wasn't in the prose. So I was kind of confused by it. I thought it was a wasted opportunity. So that's one criticism, I guess. But as I said, compared to like what I've read before and since this book, this is the kinkiest book thus far that I have read. Readability is really good. It's not the best prose out there, but at least it's not so over the top and pornified. From the moment I opened this book, I knew that this had a completely different tone than your regular dark romance, right? You don't have the typical fucking alpha douche mentality that is so common in dark romance, this underdeveloped possessiveness. There's more depth and logic to the characters, more psychology, and it's not just about fucking. Don't get me wrong, this book is still pretty camp, but it's not over the top. Here's the thing. I feel like modern dark romance is not actually there to titillate you. It's just porn. And this one is more titillating, which is, again, why I think it's so good. And that's why I look more into older dark romance. Because when I think dark romance, apart from non-con and all that, if a dark romance advertises itself as kinky, this is what I expect. This type of thing. So the plot I gave 4 stars. And the 4 stars is mostly based on how the dynamic was developed, because I really liked it, as I said. I think it's safe to say that the plot or the entire book is not completely ovulation brained, There is some thought put into it. The writing is average. There's nothing really special about it, but when I give something a 3-star rating, most of the time it's because the writing fades into the background and I can get invested in the story. That's what I mean with average. That is the bare minimum that I expect. The characters are 4 stars because, again, they are more believable. They have more substance to them than what dark romance has out there right now. There's an earnestness in wanting to depict these people as real people and not as fucking action figures with big dicks. At least when it comes to the male lead. Right, so did I like the ending? I did. The ending was more for the external plot and for the sequel, because now that the dynamic is established, the story obviously has to move to a more external plot and not be an internal one anymore. So I thought it was fine. It made sense. I wasn't like, what the fuck, this is so random. No, it was set up throughout the dynamic. And when it finally arrived, I wasn't thrown off by it. Although, as I said, I was saddened that the story was now moving on to the next phase. Would I recommend this book? I would. If you want a kinky read, this is a kinky read. Right? I wanted to read wide, even in dark romance. And I realized that I was only reading old dark romance. And so I picked up a more modern one, which is Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. This made its rounds on freaking Book Talk when it came out. I think this might have been the book that put dark romance on the map for the masses. It was published 2021. It has 583 pages, but I listened to it on audiobook while I was going about in public. Yes, I was listening to this in public. And the audiobook has around 16 hours, so it's a long book for a romance. I feel like it's too fucking long. And I've come to find that most dark romance are this long, and I'm like, why? What do you have to say that needs that many words? And then Lime said it's mostly smut, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Anyway, I gave this book 1 star. I thought it was absolute dog shit. Oh my god, I hated it. Oh, it made me cringe so bad. In fact, it made me cringe so much that I freaking wanted to convince the server to read it too, so that I could inflict the pain on somebody else. Because, it was so terrible. You guys can see. Readability, okay, I'll give it that it's readable-ish. Although, my god, my editing brain could not shut the fuck up about it. And I was listening to it, so I didn't actually read all the errors, but the prose was janky to me. Plot is 1 star. So, I realized I didn't even tell you guys what Haunting Adeline is about. I just assumed that you guys would know. But for those who don't know, Haunting Adeline is about Adeline, obviously, who's getting stalked by one Zaid, who is a hacker, badass, pedophile killer guy. Oh, dear God. And despite what the story is trying to do, that is what the book is about. It's about these two fucking. That's about it. The writing is 1 star. Oh my god. If this book were for free on AO3, I wouldn't be this bothered by it. But the fact that it got published and it got popular blows my mind. It blows my mind because it's really that bad. Oh my god, it pissed me off. Characters is 1 star. The characters are not real people. They're porn characters. Like, this encapsulates why I think modern dark romance is trash. This has all the problems that I find in modern dark romance, which is the freaking, oh my god, it's just smut, 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 smut. And then you add something dark so that it's kind of edgy, but you know, there's like this distinctly vanilla feel to it. I can tell that this book is meant to appeal to people who would find the normal sexy things sexy. They're not kinky. It's vanilla. They're attracted to very commonly sexualized things. And then they add a little bit of darkness in there because the guy's a taboo and kills pedophiles or something. But in its essence, there's nothing kinky about this. So what I wrote here in my general impressions is that it's extremely edgy with no real commitment to camp. That is also one of my biggest problems with dark romance. The stories are so fucking camp and out there, but oh my god, I don't think I'm wrong, but my impression is that this book wants to be taken seriously, like it has something to say about pedophiles and human trafficking organizations and kink. It has nothing to say about any of that. Holy shit. And I wrote here, obviously written while ovulating. Yeah. I couldn't really tell what the goal of this story was, since the tone was inconsistent. Yes, it was. So it's actually quite good that I picked up a book like this, because I'm getting a better feel of what a tone is in a book. Because on the one hand, you have completely outrageous, humorous characters who so act out of the ordinary. And on the other hand, you have like genuinely dark shit, like child sacrifices and rape and all that. It's all in there, and it's written in a way that like somehow signals to the reader, this is very serious and traumatic. But the tone you've set up is fucking funny. So what the fuck are you doing? So I also wrote here that it read like not a lot of thought was invested in this story except for horniness. And look, girls can goon. Even vanilla girls can goon. But for the life of me, I do not understand what made this book controversial. Well, I do. I'm not that dumb. But like, it's really not that fucking dark. It's preposterous. Oh my god. And bad writing. And one thing that also happens in this book that I go on and on about in the server is the fact that the sex at some point gets spiritualized. So here's the thing. I love it when stories reach that level where they start spiritualizing the sex, but for that to work, you kind of have to really build the connection and the dynamic that it's so deep. You have to heighten the emotions to that point, and then you give me the spiritualism, the freaking soul evaporating orgasm or whatever. The book doesn't do that. The book sets up this fucking ludicrous tone, and then all of a sudden, Zaid says this. If redemption resides somewhere within you, then I will spend the next of my life searching for it inside of you. He flexes his hips again, wringing another breathless moan from my lips. I will fill every inch of you, Adeline, and in time, my redemption will become your salvation. Dear God, that is such a bad line. My redemption will become your salvation? Girl, put that thesaurus down. Do you even know what you're saying and what it sounds like? Dear God. Oh, this book was so terrible. This was the first hate read of this reading period, and oh my God, it was cathartic. It was cathartic. Anyway, did I like this ending? I think it's not a secret that Haunting Adeline ends with a cliffhanger, and to be honest with you, I didn't like or hate it. And in that case, I'd rather tend to yes. More, I like the ending because the book ended. Would I recommend this book? Okay, depends. Do you want a nice hate read? Oh, do you want to just be mad at the book and just pull it apart for how bad it is? You know, do you want to get some aggressive energy out? Yes. Then I would recommend this book. For its literary quality, if it's a good story, no. So I'm kind of like, same as with the ending, I'm kind of like in between. Would I recommend this book? I think since most of the books that are in this video and that I've read is actually something that I want to like convey seriously and want to recommend seriously, I'm going to keep that tone. See, tonal consistency. So would I recommend this book? It's going to be no, I do not. Let's talk Alchemised by Senlin Yu. This was published recently, September 2025, and it's a fucking thick girl. She is 1,400 pages. Oh my god, I read this book in 15 days or so. So considering the length, I was quick. I don't usually read fantasy. This was my first try in a while, in years, to read a fantasy book. And I wasn't interested in it because of fantasy. I was interested because the fan fiction it's based on, Manacled, sounds dark in a way that I like. So Manacled is a Dremini fan fiction, if you didn't know. This book has been in my peripheral vision for a while. And when I got my new e-reader and I found out, ooh, it's going to get published, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to try. Anyway, I gave it 2 stars. My original rating was 3.5, oddly enough. And I think it's because I had nothing to compare it to. I think I was also being kind of nice to it because I saw the potential of the book. But the thing is, I'm not here to rate the potential of the book. I'm here to rate the book itself. And actually, I can summarize it with that. This is a book of wasted potential. It's a readable book. And I would even say the prose is above average for the quality of books that's coming out now. It's better than, I don't know, Haunting Adeline or something. The standard of book talk books is literally in hell, and this is a little bit above that. So it's readable prose. It's not the most beautiful prose, but the plot I give 2.5 stars. I wanted to give it 2 stars, but there was so much potential and I could see the vision. It just never came into fruition, and it sucks. The plot was so meandering. It reads like a vomit draft. And I think that is technically what it is, because it's based off a vomit draft fan fiction. I don't want to like shit talk fan fiction here, but the way fan fiction is made is very similar to how vomit drafts are made, which is you don't edit back. You just push through, move forward, right, and then you fix the story later, usually after you have your vomit draft. But in fan fiction, that's not really what happens, I feel like. It's so serial that you fix plot holes as you go. That's what it read like. It read oddly pantsed, and I saw the vision in there. It just needed to be streamlined so that it would have told a stronger story. It's very meandering. There are endless reflection passages of Helena, the main character. Oh my god, again, I realized I didn't tell you guys what this book was about. Let me do that now late into the video. So this book is about a world where there has been a war, the Hogwarts War. And it's about Helena, Hermione, and Farron, Draco, and how they experienced this war and all the trauma and the sacrifice of it all, right? So the fantasy element of this is alchemy. And Helena used to be a very skilled alchemist wizard. Okay, I'll stop. But what I'm trying to say is it's a war story. And it's meant to be this riveting tale of sacrifice and all that. It wants to be that. It wants to be an emotional book. It wasn't. So that's what this book is about. And that, for me, is fucking a great concept, right? I like that topic. I didn't think I would like war-centered trauma, but the way it was explained to me as Manacled, I was just like, that reads like juicy trauma and tears. So that's why I picked this book up. I was disappointed because despite having that element, that tone, it never reaches that point. It's almost like there's no intentionality with how it wants to steer the reader's feelings. It's just put there. It just read so messy. The writing is 3 stars. As I said, it's average writing to me, but it's above average for book talk books. Characters, I gave 2.5 because, again, I swear to God, most of these ratings are because of potential. God, I have like a 2-hour-long video with Fern about this where we discuss in detail what we would have changed so that it would hit harder. I view this book as a book that got me into fantasy. It made me see the potential of the genre and how you could utilize, I don't know, magical elements to up the stakes and all that. I get it. But again, I'm still not a fantasy reader after this because most fantasy isn't like that. In a sense, I wouldn't have minded if the fantasy element was completely deleted from the story and we focused more on the fields. But yeah, So this did make me interested in picking up more books in that genre just to see how they do it. I wrote here in my notes, my hypothesis is that Book Talk loves this book and views it as a masterpiece because the quality is above most romantasy out there. Oh yeah, by the way, this is maybe romantasy. I don't think so. I think it's, well, romance is the driving force of the plot. It doesn't have the, I don't know, frivolous quality of romantasy. Is that controversial to say? I think romantasy is frivolous. You can enjoy frivolous things. I don't think something frivolous is bad, but this book doesn't have that frivolous quality. Furthermore, I wrote, but I don't think it's anywhere close to good writing. I'd still be interested in picking up a book from the author since I see the potential. So what I'm trying to say is, same as with Nina Pinacci, for example, I think Senlin Yu has potential to improve, to hone their craft so that they can tell a very emotionally gripping tale. As it stands right now with this book, that wasn't the case. This book, oh my god, it edged me with emotions. It wants to be emotional so bad, but it just won't go there. It's so shallow. It seemed like there was a creative block to like go full tragedy. And I think maybe there is a box that the author put themselves in that they could not break out of, whether it be the common tropes in fan fiction that, you know, is now so ingrained in their imagination that they can't write another way, whether it be the source material, which is Harry Potter, where they couldn't like go there with the characters. There are so many reasons, but it did read like there was a creative block that they could not look beyond. But I will admit there are a few scenes in here that had me, I had a stirring of feels. And also there were a couple of scenes that made me go, hee hee. So as I said, I would like to see what Senlin Yu publishes later on because I think they have potential. Like the story, the author also has potential for improvement. Did I like this ending? Conceptually? Yes, I did like how this book ended. It could have been so painful. It could have been so painful. I liked it. I could see the tapestry of emotions that could have been put there and where I would have started crying. I never reached it. I was more like, oh, damn. But I didn't feel the, oh my god, how could that happen? That's not what happened. So yes, I like the ending. It just needed improvement. Would I recommend this book? No. I couldn't. I couldn't because I was thinking, who would I recommend this to? I feel like if I were to recommend it to somebody who likes an emotional read, I would have another book to recommend that's better. I haven't found that book yet, but I know there is a better book out there. If I would recommend this to a fantasy reader, I'd be like, there's probably also better fantasy out there. I wouldn't know whom to recommend this to. Maybe people who only read book talk books to introduce them slowly into better quality books without completely breaking the mold. I'm coming off so catty, but like, I don't even care. That's what I think. Next up, we have Morning Glory Milking Farm by C.M. Nascosta. This is 247 pages long, and I listened to it as an audiobook, so that was around 6 hours, and it was published 2021. Guys, I actually liked this book a lot. I gave it 4 stars. I picked this up because it's been consistently recommended to me as unexpectedly good fantasy and smut. It has like this outrageous concept. So this book is about a human girl who, due to financial limitations, has to start a job at a milking farm. And they don't milk milk, they milk bull semen. So she spends her day milking minotaurs. That's so outrageous. And in this setting, she meets a dude who's interesting. Or he's not really a dude, he's a minotaur, but you guys understand. So this was consistently recommended to me as a hidden gem with great world building and all that. So I picked it up because I needed a light read. And I have to say, this book is surprisingly wholesome for the subject matter. It was an altogether fun read. The thing that makes it so good is that this story isn't trying to be anything that it isn't. It's lighthearted, it knows it's outrageous, and, you know, it kind of catches you with the wholesomeness of the love story. The prose was very readable, it was very funny, it had this like rom-com sort of vibe to it. So, you know, I smiled a couple of times and laughed. The plot is 4 stars, so it's a very straightforward rom-com plot, which I loved. which was a lot of fun. The writing is 4 stars because it's above average in my opinion. The writing style suits the story that is being told, and the characters are 4 stars. I only give characters 5 stars if I'm like hooketh, if I'm obsessed with them, but this one is more like it has a very rom-com vibe, so I cared about the couple and about the characters as you would if you watch a really good rom-com. You want them to end up together, you want them to have a happily ever after. Apart from that, the world building, I can confirm, was actually good. It was fun. I was actually sitting there being interested in, oh my god, I wonder how vampires have parties together with Mothmen, you know? And I wonder how these restaurants work, given that all these fantasy creatures have different diets. And I wonder how interspecies couples work. You know, it was interesting. I was invested. It had, you know what else? You know, another vibe that it has is like, it's almost like a Sims vibe. Those who play The Sims know it has that vibe. It's kind of like silly. The smut is good. I don't think it's smut that gets you off, but maybe it does. I don't judge. All in all, a well-rounded, fun little book. Did I like the ending? Yes. Would I recommend it? Also yes. Next up, we have Keeping Her Under by Miranda Grant. This one has 200 pages and it was published also very recently, October 2025. I picked up this book because there was a mini controversy on it on Instagram, because the concept of this book is a doctor sexually assaulting his coma patient. So it's non-consensual somnophilia, and that had the people of the internet in an uproar. So I am a nosy person and I wanted to see, well, if people are already review bombing this before its release, I wonder if the book is even good. Because I have this sneaking suspicion that banned books are never interesting. And it's a lot of people who are just clutching their pearls for no reason. And that suspicion was confirmed with this book. Anyway, I give it a 1 star. Oh my fucking god, it was abysmal. Abysmal. I hated it. As you also can see here, I won't even get into that. I wrote here in my general impression, this book pissed me off because of how bad it was, similar to Haunting Adeline. I don't have high expectations when it comes to dark romance, so I shouldn't have been surprised. It was a good hate read and exemplary for what qualifies as bad writing. So if I were to get into a little bit of detail why I think this book is bad, it tries to be many things at the same time. It has that, what I mentioned before, tonal unawareness. This story is not aware of itself. The characters are fucking over the top. There's really no logic behind them. There is no other way to read this book other than to make fun of it. It's not a good book. To be honest, I don't think it wants to be. I think it wants to be camp, but also, and this is what I can't stand, it also wants to say something about abusive relationships and why victims return to their abusers. It wants to say something about depression. It wants to say something about childhood trauma and all that. It wants to say something about rape, but it cannot commit to the tone that it sets up, which is ridiculous and pornified. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. You can't have a ridiculously pornified character and want this serious tone when you're talking about trauma. You can talk about trauma in the pornified tone. That is possible. But you cannot have both. You can't have My Dark Vanessa and Keeping Her Under in one thing. It is not possible. It looks bad. It reads bad. And I wish that dark romance authors were aware of this. Commit to the bit. Okay? I more viewed this story as an exercise in finding faults in stories and thinking about like why something doesn't work. So in that case, it was an informative read. I don't even mean that to make fun of this book. That is the value it has for me, because I feel like it's good for your brain, if you're writing, to find exemplary books and analyze that, and to find really bad works and analyze that. So you have a little bit more of a gradient of how good something can be and how bad something can be, and you can avoid the bad thing. I think I'm over-explaining this, but that is the value of this. I do have some quotes here. I'll try not to giggle. I'll probably fail. But here we go. The opening line is like obviously there for TikTok. That's another thing about this book. This book is obviously written for social media, in a sense that there are lines in there that are outrageous, but are then never addressed again. They almost exist on a separate layer of the story. So this is the layer where I'm going to create shorts on TikTok so that people will get interested in my book. But it's not a organic line that emerges from the story itself. So the opening line is, for example, I lose my license if I'm caught touching a coma patient, but fucking hell, she is too beautiful to resist. That energy doesn't carry over, by the way. Like Slater, the doctor in the story, is very interested in Summer. By the way, the female love interest's name is Summer Winters. Fucking kill me, but yeah. He's very interested in Summer, but it doesn't have this porn vibe to it anymore. Or this particular porn vibe with outrageous dirty talk. It's more a lot of desperate yearning or something. Anyway, Slater's internal logic is outrageous and doesn't make any sense. He also says, fuck, baby, I rasp. You're teasing me so damn good. You're going to make me lose my license. That is obviously also a social media line. And towards the end, it does the thing that dark romance likes to do, where it spiritualizes the connection when it has no business being spiritualized at all. So one of the lines that was in there was, as I stay down on my knees before my God, he's talking about Summer, I wait for her decision. Like he's literally worshiping this girl. Why? Tell me. Is it worship kink? The thing is, you can include that, but fucking hell, set it up. Sell me the fantasy. Don't just plop it in there all willy-nilly. Oh my God. Anyway, did I like the ending? No. I thought the ending was utter shite. It didn't make any sense. But the entire book doesn't make any sense. Would I recommend this book? Also no. This book is so bad it's not worthy to be banned. Let it exist. Okay, let's talk about Breathing Underwater by Alex Flynn. This is a book about teen domestic violence from the perspective of the perpetrator, which is what hooked me. It has 263 pages, and I finished this in 2 days. It was published in 2001, so it's an older book. Usually when I pick up an older book, I do expect it to be better edited, and the story is somewhat more coherent, and it doesn't have this certain social media vibe to it. Yeah, so I gave this book 4 stars. I thought it was really good. It was surprisingly informative and honest. So how should I explain it? It's like the author actually had a genuine understanding of what it's like to be somebody who's done something wrong like this. And at that age too, being a teen. And it's more about how an abusive person slowly comes to realize what they've done. And it doesn't sacrifice character internality and internal logic and voice to deliver that message. What I mean is, it doesn't read like I'm trying to be convinced of something, you know? It doesn't feel artificial. The book isn't trying to make me like this character or hate this character. The character simply is. It is surprisingly in-depth and genuine. I keep on saying the same thing, but it was a lot of fun to read and it was super informative. And I loved that it didn't have this preachy tone that I feel like a lot of modern books have, in part because of social media. I love that this book was very interested in making this guy seem human. So I gave it complete 5 stars in readability, again, because this is an older book and it seems like it's been edited, yada yada. The plot is 4 stars. It's not a riveting plot. This is not a book about the plot. It's about the character. So it's simple what happens in the story. It's just this guy processing feelings, and you've got a little bit of reanalyzing how they got together and what made this girl so special, and then what ended up happening, how he became more and more abusive, all that. The writing is average, but then again, it's average for an old book. I think today would be a solid 4 stars, but it was okay. It faded into the background and I could really get immersed in the story. And the characters are 4 stars. Again, I didn't really read this book because I cared about the characters and what would happen to them. It's not that type of book. So Nick, who is the main character here, is more of a representative of every abusive person and how they could end up if they looked for therapy, and how the internal world looks like of such a person as they process what they've done. So there's a lot of denial about like, well, yeah, but maybe my victim was this, that, and the other. And all that is all in here in brutal honesty, but also in such intelligent and reflective writing that is then funneled through a certain voice. I hope that makes sense. Another thing I should mention is the victim's perspective is not at all in this book. Because usually when physically abusive partners get charged and convicted, they're not allowed to have access to their victims anymore. Hence, since that is the perspective this book is told from, he doesn't have any access to his ex-girlfriend anymore. So that victim perspective is not in there at all, which I thought was such a good choice because let's say if this were dual POV between abuser and victim, it would muddy the message and the tone of this book. And I'm so happy that that perspective is not included here at all. But there is a sequel that does have that perspective, just so you know. This is not a very quotable book, but I think this quote pretty much summarizes what the emotional narrative of this book is, which is when Nick says, "I remember now how to cry." Did I like the ending? Yes, although I didn't read this book for the plot. I didn't read this book for the ending. I read it for the journey. And would I recommend this book? I would. I would if that topic ever made you curious. This is a pretty good book for it. I'm not even sure if I can say this title out loud. Let's talk about Babyfucker from Urs Allemann. I think I should say it straight up. Don't let the title fool you. That is not what this fucking pamphlet is about. It only has 134 pages, and a lot of those pages are just the introduction trying to explain what this work is. It's what I would qualify as the kind of German literature that is very focused on language. It's like, can you even say it? It's a linguistic type of literary? Anyway, I didn't think very much of it. I only gave it 1 star in every fucking category there is. And the thing about it is that it's like that on purpose. If I were to explain this, it's very performance art. So it's not actually about a guy who is doing what the title says. It's expressionistic, so it's trying to say something. See, I'm not even very good at explaining this. It's a type of literary fiction where it's not really about the story, it's about the words that are being used and really out there sentence structures. The thing is, I wanted to read this shit in German because it's originally German. This is a banned book in Germany. And Germans don't usually ban books. At least not in my impression. So it has to have had a big controversy for that to happen. And of course, if that is the case, I'm right there and I want to read it. So if it weren't for the introduction in this fucking pamphlet, in this book, I guess, I would have been lost. I wouldn't have known what the fuck this book is about. So I'm just gonna take the interpretation of the introduction, which is, this book is inspecting how separate literature is from our reality. It sounds so abstruse and out there and pretentious, but I kind of get it. So the thing is, Allemann is using a very provocative and very controversial sentence like, can you guys read that? And by using this controversial sentence, the text is forcing itself into existence. It's imposing itself into our reality. I don't know if that makes fucking sense, but yeah. All you guys need to know is that this is for people who like, I guess, poetry. This is not even poetry. Who like literature on a linguistic line level, not on a storytelling level. There's a little bit of plot there, but a lot of it has to be inferred. It's a very artistic sort of story. It's not even really a story. It's so hard to explain. There is some description of like the I can't say it. There is some description about it, but it's not settled in a story. It's just there to shock you. Goes to show that usually people who ban books don't even actually read it and don't try to understand what the fuck it's about. And anybody with 2 eyes and half a brain cell, when they read this, can tell that that is not what the book is about. It's frigging, the Swiss are so unhinged. They came up with fucking Alien, they came up with Dadaism, and now they have this shit. Suffice to say, I didn't get it. So, would I like this ending? Girl, I don't even remember what the ending is. I was just so confused by the end of it. So no. Would I recommend this? Also no. Because what is there to recommend? Let's talk Wasteland by Francesca Leah Block. This one is 160 pages and was published 2003. It has a young adult tag. I picked this book up because the central theme is incest. Incest is one of the main themes in one of my work. And what I like to do in such cases is I like to pick up books that have similar themes to get inspired, to see what would be a nice way to depict it. So that's why I picked up this book. I was kind of put off by the young adult tag, but I have come to realize that young adult before the young adult boom was dark. Because now if you think young adult, you think like, I don't know, Divergent, Hunger Games, and stuff like that. But this isn't it. Like, back in the day, I think authors had more freedom to write about darker things. But that's neither here nor there. I gave this book 4 stars. I actually quite liked it. I thought it was well written. I wrote here, this book convinced me that older YA goes there. Quite the lyrical book, which suits the story well. Yeah, I was actually really surprised by how lyrical this book is. And good lyricism. It fit the vibe of the story, which is this little bit more angsty, a little bit more emotional and sad sort of depiction of the relationship. It's almost like a little bit wistful. It fit with the story. And I was also surprised with the lack of plot. Like, this doesn't read like genre fiction at all. There's something about YA that makes me think that it's genre fic for some weird reason. I think this has a lot to do with that when YA became popular, that was the time that I was also a young adult or in that age bracket. So it's now associated with that. I'm surprised to see, as I said, that older young adult wasn't that sanitized, I guess. I also wrote here, incest is nuanced. So if you're expecting like a pornified, see, that's the thing about the incest books that I find nowadays. If it has like that tag, it's usually porn. It's like the stepbrother category on Pornhub. And that's not the type of book I'm looking for. I'm looking for a more emotional one. And this is one such book. But I also wrote that it's not really delved into too deeply. It's not really interrogated a lot, which is fine because, again, this is young adult and it does gloss over the truly darker things. And it works for me. It's still a worthy read for me because I'm in there to look at how does this particular thing happen given a certain context, right? So yeah, I'm mostly happy with this book. Readability is 5 stars despite the lyricism. It's good lyricism. It flows well. I can tell what the author's style is. The plot is 3 stars. This is not a very plotty book. It's very literary. It's very emotional. There is, things do happen. It's not a completely plotless book, but it's not central. What's central is the exploration of this dynamic between brother and sister. I should mention that the incest is a sibling one. The writing is 4 stars to me. It's good writing. I would say it's above average writing compared to what I see nowadays. I'm so biased. I really think older books have better writing. Characters are 4 stars. There is emotional depth within them, but I didn't really care about them in the end. I don't know if it's the book's fault or just my perspective for reading it, which is mostly research. Ideally, while I'm doing my research, I also find books where I care about the characters. I wrote here as the concluding remark to my thoughts, were I to have found this book back in the day, I would have lamented the fact that it didn't delve deeper into the incest theme. I'm not trying to say that it's a shallow interrogation of the incest theme. It's more that it's age appropriate for young adult. Wild, freaking young adult appropriate incest. It doesn't really go very deep into the, I don't know, I think what makes a book not young adult anymore is a sex scene. I didn't want a sex scene, but anything to do with sex is not in there. Anything to do with abuse is not in there. And any truly what I would consider darker thoughts are not in there, but there is a lot of emotion. That's what I mean with I still wanted it to delve deeper. That's what I mean with if I had found this book before and not on purpose for research, I would be like, man, I wish there was more substance. There was more darkness. Anyway, I even wrote that here. Although I am aware this is mostly because of the YA tag, I would have wanted more darkness, more of the socially unacceptableness, more of the taboo of it all. So I wanted the dilemma to be fleshed out a little bit more for an adult. I'm still searching for an adult book. See, I wrote it here. I'm still searching for an adult book that has a more raw emotional angle toward this topic. I was mostly teased about it here, but the writing skill involved made me wish they hadn't written it for a teen audience. So I think this author had the potential to make this mature, make it for adults. I guess my biggest problem with this book is that it was published for young adults and not adults. Otherwise, I would have been hooked. I would have rated this 5 stars probably. It's just missing that last step of like internality that I so wanted. I have a few quotes here just to exemplify the lyricism. So here's one. Sometimes when you ask things like that, it was like I could feel you touching me with your hand. So, oh God, it was so beautiful because there's like this suspicious familiarity between the siblings. And the brother would ask things like, are you okay? Do you feel okay? You know, like for care. And this is from the perspective of the sister who then thinks, if I were to describe it, it's like she registers those comments not as familial, but as like something else, obviously. And that was such a beautiful way to depict that emotion. Another one. You touched me way more than Mom ever did. I know that. Although she was always holding and cuddling you. Again, a beautiful hint at like the questionable nature of these two. Oh, I wrote here, prologue, exclamation point, exclamation point. So that's me telling me that I should read the paragraph where this is from. So I'm going to do that. Then you reached out and curled your fingers around mine, so tight. I knew you recognized me. That was the first time I knew I had a heart inside my body. Oh, that is such... Oh, that's such good prose to capture emotion. That is such evocative, freaking emotional prose. I should be reading more from this author, to be honest. So, did I like the ending? I did. It was a good ending. I didn't like where the story went eventually, but when I consider the entirety of it, it's a good ending. Would I recommend this book? Yes. If incest as an emotional theme interests you, this is a worthy read. Let's talk Das Parfum, die Geschichte eines Mörders, or the English title, The Perfume, the Story of a Murderer by Patrick Süskind. It has 320 pages. The audiobook has around 10 hours. I listened to this book, but more on that later. This is a classic of German literature. It was published 1985, so it's not that old of a classic, because if you think German classics, you think Goethe, Schiller, and the like. So this is more of a recent one. And I gave the book the full 5 stars. Oh my God, this book is so fucking good. So in school, obviously, we read a lot of German classics. And that's why this category has been somewhat tainted for me. I recently learned that they are not as rigorous with interpreting texts in other countries as they are in Germany. So just to set the scene here, usually you have to write pages long essays or Interpretation, that's what you call it, interpretations of a text for German class. That's usually the exam. And it's a very rigorous way of analyzing texts based on the philosophy of death of the author. So the thing is, I didn't hate it while I was at school, but you come to connect it to homework and exams. That's why I shied away from German classics. Even back then in class, when we had to pick a book to read for that period, I was already very interested in this classic. Alas, it did not come to be. We didn't pick that book because the segment in that time was Bildungsromane. It's a specific kind of German novel, and this was in the selection. And the other one was Steppenwolf from Hermann Hesse. And I fucking hated that book with a burning passion that I never wanted to pick up another Bildungsroman ever in my life. But it's been enough years. We were talking about this in the server. This has been on my TBR since forever. And finally, because of Tofu, I decided to pick it up because Tofu said they really loved this fucking book. And I'm like, you know what? I'll take the plunge. So I do have a physical copy of this book at home that I intended to read as such. The thing is, my German, well, not really my German, but more the internal German voice that I have, or the internal voice I use for German, is not German enough for the language to have its full effect. So the first time I picked this up, I was like slogging through it because German is a language that has like fucking long sentences and you're waiting for the verb to arrive. And then when the verb is finally at the end of the sentence, you're like, wait, what does this connect to again? So it's a very confusing language. And the book is like that. It's on purpose like that. It's like run-on sentences. I wouldn't say Süßkind is the worst example of this, but it has that, and I'm not used to reading it. That's why I gave this book a 2-star on readability, but that was fixed, and it was fixed through an audiobook, the one that is on Audible and that is read by Hans Korte. That narrator, oh my god, excellent fucking performance. It made the story come to life. It breathed the emotion that I think was in there, but that I am not capable of seeing because I'm not German enough. I'm not trying to like sound like I'm pitying myself or anything. It's just, I don't know if it's actually a psychological theory. I feel like you think in a certain way that is somehow connected to the language, and I don't have that in a way that native German speakers do. So I don't get the little quips and humor. I don't get the tone and all that. So that entire thing was fixed by listening to it, and then I got it. And by God, this is the best demonstration of German humor on page. At least a type of German humor that is a little bit more intellectual, a little bit more, I wouldn't say highbrow, I wouldn't call it that. It's from a smart and kind of sarcastic German dude who makes fun of everybody. Actually, I'm already characterizing the narrator. This has an omniscient narrator. But before I get too fucking deep into the literary analysis of this book, I'm gonna tell you what it's about, but I feel like a lot of people know what this is about. The concept is simple. This is about Jean-Baptiste Grenouille, who lives in Revolution-era France, I'm assuming. Girl, I'm not a historian. It's some like old school freaking Baroque-coded Frenchness in there. And the thing that's special about Grenouille is that he has a heightened sense of smell. So it's a little bit of magical realism in a sense that he has a superhuman ability to smell. And not only that, he's also a genius, which is so characteristic of a Bildungsroman. It's always centered around a protagonist, usually a man, who either thinks he's a genius or who actually is one. Most of the time, at least in Steppenwolf, it's about a guy who thinks he's a genius and he's not recognized and society won't acknowledge me, blah, 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 blah. That's why I hate Bildungsroman. It's about some fucking, see now I'm thinking in German, like a freaking morose guy who feels like he wasn't validated by society, like society owns them something. Don't get me wrong, that is still in this book. But it's done in such a comical way, almost it's satirical. The narrator makes fun of Grenouille a lot, and he makes fun of every single character that's in there. So I know that omniscient narrators are out of style, but this is how one could do it. This is a good demonstration of it. So just to get back to my ratings, because I'm fucking excited. I fucking love this book so much. Readability is 2 stars, and I think a huge part of that is my own limitations of not being that well read in German. After this book, oh my god, I want to read more German lit. I don't expect to find something like this, but it kind of, produced this motivation within me to want to practice the language, which is the reason why I read Haunting Adeline in German, which is a huge fucking gap quality-wise, but I digress. The plot I gave 4.5 stars because it's predictable. It follows a very traditional Bildungsroman structure, which is it's 4 parts. You've got the first part, which is about childhood and them finding a profession they're interested in. Then you have a period where they look about and question the world. Then it's about them training in that profession. And then you have the ending. So it follows a very predictable structure. I can see why this category is often seen as coming of age, but Bildungsroman, at least from what I learned, is a very specific kind of structure where it's about a profession. The character is usually learning a trade. So in this case, it's the perfume trade, how to make them and stuff like that. Whereas coming of age doesn't really have that limitation. So in that sense, I know where this story was going, structurally speaking. But the freaking contents of it and the tone of voice and the humor in it, it breathed life to this stuffy and tired fucking genre. It was so fun. I loved the narrator, and I loved Hans Korte reading the narrator. The writing, oh my god, where do I begin? Where do I begin with the writing? It is magnificent, beautiful, all the fucking synonyms, and it made me believe in the German language again and it being beautiful, because I'm not that skilled in German to know how it can be so pretty. Like, I read Goethe. The thing that I appreciated about Goethe was not his prose. It was more the stories, the way he depicted things. It was very Sturm und Drang und all that shit. Like, I like that period. Romantik, was weiß ich. See, now I'm moving into German. But this one is like, it's not the most modern, as I said. It was published 85, but oh my god, how can you like, Süskind's prose is so vivid. Oh my god, I could smell it. Do you understand what type of skill it requires for your reader to smell something? And he did it again and again with different scents, where I'm like, I can imagine it. Oh my god, I can imagine how good this smells, or how bad this smells, or whatever else. Because I think what he does is, he doesn't really try to... Well, he does try to, like, connect it to familiar scents, but it's more the words that he uses creates this atmosphere where it's like a blend of, like, familiar things, and it doesn't even have to be a smell, and then you can kinda imagine it. Like, because at this point, I think a lot of people have watched the movie, but at some point, Grenouille finds the scent of beauty. I don't even know how to describe it. For me, the interpretation was he found the literal smell of good, which happens to be attached to a very beautiful woman, right? It's a very seductive scent, but also very innocent, but you can manipulate a lot of people with it. So that is such an abstract thing. For the life of me, how the fuck does that smell? But he does it. Süskind does it. It's insane. You guys. I'm so fucking pumped because I freaking loved this book so much, and I didn't expect to like a German book this much. The characters, for me, 5 stars. Although I have to say, these are not characters that are like psychologically convincing, and they seem realistic, but you kind of have to imagine this in like drama logic, if you will, where the stage play you're watching is more of the funny sort, but also like creepy, but like in a funny way. It's hard to describe. It's almost classical. You know, it's almost Shakespearean, if you will, where you're not sitting there and reading and thinking Grenouille is an actual person. Of course you can, but that's not the tone that the prose carries, right? If I were to describe Grenouille, he is despicable. It's stated in the prose that he's the most despicable person ever, and he has no qualms about it. He doesn't give a shit. By the way, that part wasn't captured in the movie at all. To me, Grenouille in the movie seems almost on the spectrum. But in the book, no, he's meant to be an evil character. That's on purpose, that exaggeration in there. He is, if I were to describe him, he is despicable but likable in a way that I only know Germans can be. I don't know how to describe it. It's this, oh my god, he's such a piece of shit, such a arrogant, but also silly, kind of. Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is that, actually. Arrogant, but silly, but also obviously hurting. That's just Germany for you. So if I go into my general thoughts, I wrote here, this book single-handedly restored my faith in German literature. Süskind is a talented and masterful writer. Yeah, his prose is vivid, funny, and the story is absolutely insane. Yeah, that's basically it. And then I praised Hans Quate again. Guys, please, I am this in love with this book that I almost want you guys to learn German so you can listen to Hans Quate read you the story. I don't think it translates very well into English. I don't know. I'm so confused because the way I love this book is not the same way I love English books. It's just vastly different. And I cannot describe it because I'm not that skilled of a writer, like Süskind, for example. My concluding remark here is, this book is truly a Duftorgie, so a scent orgy. It's funny, unhinged, yet also dark and sensual. And that's the thing. That's also one thing that I thought was so fucking interesting about this book, is that freaking Grenouille is asexual. He's asexual, but the book is still so sensual. Holy shit, it's so good. So, Did I like this ending? Fucking yes, like absolutely. That is exactly how you nail an unhinged ending to an unhinged book. It made so much sense. I was just like absorbing. I wasn't even, my crit brain was off. I was just listening and being like, holy shit. What the fuck's happening? Oh, love it. That's a climax. Quite literally, maybe even. Would I recommend this book? Yes. And if you can, read it in German or listen to it in German. But I know I've been going on about this book for so long, but I do want to read you guys a couple of quotes, and I will read them in German. I will flash on screen the English translation. I wanted to read you guys a description of the scent, but I feel like you guys have to experience it for yourselves. So I'll just stick to the 2 quotes that I wrote down here, which is, this is how the narrator describes Grenouille fairly early on that I thought was funny. An die Welt gab es nichts ab als seinen Kot. Kein Lächeln, keinen Schrei, keinen Glanz des Auges, nicht einmal einen eigenen Duft. And one other thing that this book does that I feel like it's quintessential German is the fact that there is just some incest shoehorned in there. And for that reason, I'm going to read you guys that quote because, oh my god, when I heard that, I was just like, of course. What did I expect? So here it goes. Weiß Gott, verfluchte sich, dass der Vater dieser Frau war und nicht ein Fremder, nicht irgendein Mann, vor dem sie so läge wie jetzt vor ihm, und der sich ohne Bedenken an sie, auf sie, in sie legen könnte mit all seiner Begehrlichkeit. Oh, that was such a fucking good... It's such a good line! It's like... Oh my god. I'm gonna stop now, but like, needless to say, I fucking love this book. Please, 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 do yourself a favor and pick it up. Next book is Rejection by Tony Tulathimute? I'll just call him Tony, forgive me. This one has 272 pages and was published 2024. So I picked this book up because I wanted to read wide, because this is a short story collection and satirical over the topic rejection. In case that wasn't obvious. I gave this entire thing 4 stars, but it's a high 4 stars. So my original rating was 4.5, but oof, this collection is really, really good. This is the first time I have encountered such astute prose. It's very, very readable, don't get me wrong. It's very intelligent, but also very readable. So the language is not like, you know, over the top. It's a type of prose I think I would describe as that the story, the narrative is describing a complex emotional idea, but the prose is razor sharp. It can fucking point its finger directly at it and you get it. So that's what I mean with it. It's super intelligent. But also, apart from it being extremely readable, it's also easily digestible if you want it to be. What I mean by that is if you don't choose to reflect on what the text is trying to say, it's still a fun read. How would I describe it? There's almost like a hidden intention behind the text that is just, it's not that hidden. You just have to break through a little bit. But you don't have to, because the stories in themselves are very unhinged and already address the topic of rejection. But if you want to, you can dig deeper and it's right there. It's not that difficult. It's like transparently in between the lines. Oh, it's so good. The only reason why I gave this 4 stars is because, as is normal with this category, not every story appealed to me. So my favorite stories were the feminist, Pix, main character, and RE Rejection. So that's 4 out of 7, which I think if it's the majority, it's already a good collection. I won't get too deeply into the stories in here, but one thing that I want to fucking mention is that one story where it's rejection from the female perspective, I was freaking in awe, because that was a fucking good depiction of woman-on-woman dynamics and also what it's like to experience rejection if you're a woman and how unhinged it gets and to what it connects, what you think about yourself. Like, I couldn't believe this was written by a man. I really couldn't. It was that smart. It reads like from someone who's had first-hand experience as a woman. Ah, so good. So I wrote here my general impressions. Intelligent and biting prose. I marveled how much I could relate to some stories, and marveled some more how the author could depict such varying point of views so deeply and realistically. I absolutely loved the stories that I did. So that's the 4 out of 7. You know, I have to give you guys a sample so you guys understand. And of course, it's going to be about that one story where the woman gets rejected. So here we go. What happens here is she's hooking up with her friend, and this is how she describes the sex with him. But then the mood shifts. She is no longer mommy, he is daddy, and he lifts and tosses her around with a thrilling lack of effort, and, as she's long suspected based on the size of his ears and nose, he has an era-defyingly huge dick. Curved in the way only really huge ones are, like they have inches to spare and can take the long way around. That's how you know it's satire, but that's also how you know it's intelligent. Just the little hint of a thrilling lack of effort. There's something about that seems so astute to me, because you would only know that that part is thrilling if you actually talk to women. I know the bar is in hell, but like, there's something very astute about just that one line. And oh, I forgot to mention, but I think I need to. As I was reading along, I was hooked by the first 2 stories, and then it got kind of slow, and then there was one story that was interesting, and then it got slow again. And then I was like thinking, oh man, this book really dropped off in the end. But the freaking finale of this book is a rejection letter to the author himself from a publishing house. And that fucking story, whatever thoughts you had while reading the entire thing, in that final story, the author proves that he's self-aware. He proves in detail how he knows exactly what he's doing and what you're gonna think about it. And fucking hell, that was so smart and so funny. I had a fucking laugh. Also, it proves my point that to be able to write this intelligently, you have to be, number 1, a good study of people, and number 2, a good study of yourself. So, the final line of that last short story was, for a rejection to be settled, first you, the reject, must hear and comprehend and accept. Did I like this ending? And by ending, I mean the finale of this book. Yes. Would I recommend this book? Yes. It's really good. Let's talk about Josie and Jack by Kelly Braffett. This is 256 pages long, and it was published in 2005. So we have another older YA book. Not only that, we have another YA that is incest themed. So this was in the list when I was looking for books to do research on. So that is my only motivation. So this book is as lyrical as the other one, but I would even say it's more vibey. So I gave it 4 stars. I was very happy with this. Actually, I was more happy with this than with Wasteland, because this one had a specific vibe to it, which is gothic, which to me, incest is a very gothic topic. Even wrote here, finally some gothic incest. I love the tone of the story. I love how the incest was more emotional rather than sexual. Even though there are hints of a bit more sensual kind of incest. I didn't expect to like this book and the writing this much, which is true. I was positively surprised from the first chapter on that it's very vibey. It's vibey in a way. Interestingly enough, I would have criticized this before my literary fiction awakening, but I could tell the intention behind it. It's very gothic. You have a lot of gothic themes there, which is the creepy house, the abusive family member, the quirky kids, the questionable views to society and all that. It has that distinct, if not gothic, southern gothic feel, which I enjoyed. As I said, I was very surprised, first of all, to find it, and second of all, to enjoy it this much. Although I will say that vibe kind of dissipates a little bit towards the end. Well, it doesn't dissipate, it transitions into a teens lost in society sort of narrative, but it still maintains this very emotional and a little bit of wistful and yearning vibe to it, which, as I said, I loved it. I was invested in this story, but I wouldn't completely say it's because I was emotionally invested in the characters. It was more like I was interested where the story would go because it's setting up an interesting, you guessed it, vibe. So I would describe the writing as moody and very tonally aware of its moodiness. That's why it carries over to the next phase of the story. It kind of makes me believe that this author is very skilled, and I wished he would have written an adult book about this topic, because that's also my main gripe. I know it's advertised as YA, but I wish that there was an adult version of this book. Because it doesn't delve that deeply into the darkness, because it can't, because of the YA tag, I think. I mean, it's still there. It's very emotional. There is a lot of value in this, and you can infer, if you're an adult reading this, how dark you would take it. The thing is, this book was severely limited in taking it that far because it is YA, as I said. However, I would say this book is rereadable as hell. In fact, I might get a physical copy of it because I would like to, get into the details of my thoughts and impressions of every single scene that was like vibey. And, even the interaction between the siblings, of what I could imagine distinctly what the emotions are. Not that it's indistinct, more like how can I make it more adult? How could I communicate it to an older audience, if you will? Anyway, to be honest, I know I said this already in Wasteland. I think I'm going to be picking up a lot more YA books that were published around the 2000s because what the hell, they are so good. So, did I like the ending? I did. The thing is, though, because the emotions weren't delved into, well, they were delved into deeply, but not delved into with an adult lens, the ending kind of, is a little bit janky, I have to say. But I can see how it makes sense tonally. I can see how it makes sense in a gothic way, how it made sense in an emotional way. I could see the vision. It's just, I think the problem was the restriction of the young adult tag. Would I recommend this book? Yes. I would recommend this book. Read it if you like gothic, if you like incest. Not pornified incest, emotionally handled incest. Very good. Let's talk about the only nonfiction book I read in this reading period, which is Spare by Prince Harry. I listened to this on audiobook, so that was around 15.5 hours. And the draw was, apart from it being a view into a public, but in my opinion, impersonal family, apart from that, the main draw for me was that Prince Harry himself read it. And there's just something about that hooked me. I think they do this quite often in memoirs, but the thing is, I don't think you can get to know Prince Harry like that. He is so public, but also not. He is not a very personable celebrity, if you will. That's the whole thing about the royal family, in my impression. So when that was clear, I was just like, I'd like to get to know Prince Harry. But the other reason why I picked this up was because I have a character that has a privileged background, and I wanted to do some research how it's like to grow up as royalty, and what a lovely thing to have, an actual royal talking about their life. Anyway, I gave the book 4 stars. I think it's very hard to rate memoirs, because death of the author is not possible with this one, but it gave me exactly what I came for, to be honest. In addition to that, a huge hatred toward the paparazzi. If I were to delve deeper into it. So, the ghostwriter, who was J.R. Do you say Muringer or Muringer? I have no idea. But the ghostwriter did a really good job. The prose is readable while also immersive and funny. It seems like to me he encapsulated Prince Harry very well. Although, of course, I don't know him, so how would I know? It still felt personable in a way. The plot was 4 stars. How can I rate the plot of a fucking memoir? But I deducted 1 star because I did have one criticism, which is the middle part felt kind of slow. So it had saggy middle syndrome, oddly enough. The writing, as I said, is good, and the characters... You know what was the oddest thing while listening to this is, because I only read fiction, and then listening to this, it was so fucking weird to think that these people actually exist and I know what they look like. I have limited opinions of them because I'm not that big of a royal family stan, but I knew of them and I know what happened to them, and I have an impression. It wasn't like a first impression anymore. One thing I have to say though, just back onto the writing. I know part of it is intentional, that they leave out the juicier arguments, and for the love of God, I don't need to know about those exactly. I still think the book sets up the royal family in a way that you can infer what those arguments are about, but it's not on page. I don't care about that. What I mean more is that I feel like the writing Even though it's very personable and very quote-unquote raw, there is still a distance, I feel like, between what Prince Harry is telling me and what actually happened. I'm not sure if I can blame it on the fact that the royal family seems to be very reserved as a family. They're not very upfront with their feelings. I don't know if I can blame it on that or the fact that Prince Harry just doesn't want to tell us about all the juicy details of his life, which is valid. But there is that there. I was still fairly satisfied with the book. I learned a lot. The main draw for me is not to find out what actually happened with all the gossip. It was more to get a vibe of what it's like to be him. And I got that vibe, so I liked it. That being said, I would like to read you guys. I think this is fairly in the beginning of the book. If not, it's the opening line. I forget. I listened to it in audiobook, so I can't look it up. But I feel like this sets up the vibe of his life pretty well, which is the heir and the spare. There was no judgment about it, but also no ambiguity. I was the shadow, the support, the plan B. I was brought into the world in case something happened to Willie. I can't get over the nickname Willie for Prince William. Anyway, I was summoned to provide backup, distraction, diversion, and, if necessary, a spare part. Kidney, perhaps. Blood transfusion. Speck of bone marrow. This was all made explicitly clear to me from the start of life's journey and regularly reinforced thereafter. At least I had a lot of thoughts when I first heard that. I think I can say this, that Prince Harry said that he didn't mind being the spare. Just that it was clear. Why worry about something that you can't change? Which makes sense. But there's just a quality to it where you immediately empathize. There's something very human in that text, which, by the way, also, one big thing I learned from this book, which of course I already knew, but it just got confirmed, is that even the royal family has interpersonal conflicts like the rest of us. It is not any different. And that always makes me feel, I wouldn't say happy, but like connected. That makes me feel more human, that I can even connect to the royal family, if that makes sense. So, did I like the ending? Yeah. Would I recommend this book? Yeah, actually I would. It's such a rare glimpse into such a private but also public family. So if you're like culturally interested or whatever, or if you're like me, you're just doing research for a character who could pass off as being royal, this is as close to a first-hand experience you can get if you're just a regular pleb like me. So the next book is Sisters by Daisy Johnson, my first foray into literary horror. This book has 210 pages and was published 2020. It took me 4 days to read this one because actually I read about until halfway through and I was hating on this so hardcore, and then I realized, man, I'm not giving this a chance. So I started again from the beginning and reread it. I think both attempts lasted 2 days. So there's that. I gave it a 4 stars. I was actually very happy with this book in the end. The first few chapters were a slog. It was so slow and it was a brand of lyricism I hated. I couldn't vibe with it. It just sounded pretentious to me. There's something about, there is a certain kind of lyricism that is just so fucking annoying to read because it's trying too hard. It's not honest. I can't describe it. This particular style, I fucking hated it. Oh my god, it was so annoying to read. I had to consciously make an effort not to be annoyed at the prose style. Not because it wasn't readable in a grammatical sense. It's just the brand of lyricism was super fucking annoying. That's why 2 stars for that. The plot, however, was really good. So this book is about a toxic relationship between 2 sisters. That's all you need to know, really, because everything else is just vibes. There is a mystery in there, but the plot is very sparse, and it would do no good to summarize it here. But in that sense, with that bare bones plot, I gave it 4 stars because it was executed well. In a sense that, like, this is the type of thriller or mystery where it isn't really about what is happening, and I really love it, where you have to look at the lines and what it's trying to convey to understand where the story is steering you. So it's a lot of what I like to call interpretive meat which I fucking enjoy, where the story is very sparse with the hints that it gives you, and those that you find, you actually have to sit there and think, does this mean that? So it's more of like a line level mystery. I know it doesn't sound appealing, but trust me, it's fun. It was so fun. I was being gaslit by this book, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Again, writing is 2 stars. I just didn't vibe with it, but I was still able to enjoy it, which is just a testament to how interesting this story is outside of the prose. The characters I gave 2.5 stars. I didn't really care about these characters. I cared about this story as you would care about a puzzle you're solving. You're not really emotionally invested. You're more in there to like figure it out. And in that regard, this story really shines. So my general impression is, even if the prose wasn't my favorite, this story made me realize that I missed interpreting. This is the book that made me seek out literary fiction, and it sent me down this path that I was happy that I discovered, because literary horror is like, I think, one of my favorite genres now. Just a few quotes to like give you guys a vibe of the story. So the 2 sisters are called September and July, and the story is told from the perspective of July. I will always think September's body makes more sense than my own. And then as an example of like what I mean, that the prose is kind of fucking corny and not my style, July is describing her high school crush, and she's saying, oh, this part about his body, he's so slim or whatever. Just imagine that in pretentious lyricism. And then that entire description ends with the exactitude of him, the humanness. Oh my God. I'm afraid it's not landing as it did when I read the book. But when I read that, I'm just like, okay, calm down, settle down. There's some teenage boy, and you're a teenage girl. Please. And then actually, I do have one favorite line of the book. The relationship between September and July is that September is the more domineering sister and July is more of the follower. And September consistently makes July do things that she doesn't want to do. And she's kind of like imposing herself, and she's not allowing July to develop an identity for herself. She wants them to be one person. And so, one line that perfectly depicts that is when September forces July to say, if there could only be one of us, it would be you. I thought it was such a perfectly dark line. It was my favorite, given the context in the story. So, did I like the ending of this book? Yes, in a mystery sense. That was a good ending. It was satisfying. Would I recommend this book? I absolutely would. If you enjoy interpreting, if you enjoy engaging with a mystery on a line level, in a sense that when you read something, you're wondering, but what does it mean? And then you have to come up with a hypothesis. This book is for sure fun. All right, let's talk about Midnight Rain by James Newman. This one has 283 pages, and it was published 2004. This book I read in 3 days. It's a coming of age, but also kind of thriller. So it's about this town, midnight, and a murder that happened there. And it's told from the perspective of, I think, a 12-year-old boy, a young boy. And, you know, it has that distinct coming of age feeling, but like with a breath of thriller in there, which was the hook for me while I was reading. It's just seeing this typical thriller things from the perspective of a little quirky, a little, how should I describe him? A little bit, a young boy with a very active imagination. But alas, I only gave the entire thing a 3-star rating, and by 3-star I do mean this book is average. There's nothing particularly special about it. At some points it got tedious because then the coming of age motive just took center stage more than the thriller one. I don't think both genres were balanced well. I would say this is more of a coming of age novel than it is a thriller one. Actually quite funny how I came to this book. I forgot I had it. It was in my old e-reader, so I must have gotten it a few months back and I just simply forgot about it. So when I was browsing for my next read, I was like, what's this? Why is this here? And the way I know myself, when something ends up in my e-reader, there's usually a dark twist in the book that interested me. So I was spending, I guess, not long, maybe the first 3 chapters wondering, why is this here? And then I figured out why. It's because this book has an abusive mother. And not only that, I've came to find out later, there is some hints of an Oedipus complex in there. And that is a topic that I'm currently researching for my own work, so that's probably why it's there. My general thoughts are the conflict that interested me the most about this book was outside of the main plot, which tends to happen with me if I'm reading an average book. It's always like the side characters that I find most interesting. So that side character was the older brother Dan, and I'll explain it later. Because the main conflict was actually quite predictable, so I was more interested in Dan, who exits the story relatively early in the book. Right, I gave it readability 5 stars because, again, published 2004, usually the prose is very readable from that time. The plot, average, super average. The writing, I would also say average, not in a bad way, okay? Nothing bad about it and nothing really good about it. The prose kind of fades into the background like that. The characters, 3.5, and that 0.5 star is solely because of Daniel. But more in general, I feel like the main character, Kyle, has a very charming voice. It almost gave me the feeling I was reading this to humor a 12-year-old boy. Just fun. But I would like to get into Dan. I was really interested in Dan because his conflict had so much more potential for complication. And it wasn't utilized to its full effect, I felt like. You know, and I was kind of pissed about it, but not really pissed because I'm like, ooh, I could use that conflict for my work. So what happens is that Kyle witnesses a murder. He goes to his brother Dan and he tells him, and Dan is the older brother who's more responsible, and, you know, Kyle really admires him. And then we learn a little bit about the backstory of this family because the mother is an abusive alcoholic. Turns out their dad was a Vietnam veteran who died, and their mom never got over it. So she turned to the bottle, and very young, I think Dan was 13, he became the adult of the house. And that for me is a very interesting coming of age story. How somebody's forced to grow up fast. And Dan is the recipient of the mother's abuse most of the time. At least that's how I read it. And to me, it read very Oedipal. Not in the sense that Dan is attracted to his mom, but like it had potential for an Oedipus complex. I'm like, I like that conflict for a basis for that particular psychological phenomenon. The book has unexpected, darker psychological themes. Don't get me wrong. Like, for example, when Kyle witnesses the murder, which is a sex crime-based murder, Kyle gets a boner while watching that, which I thought was like, I didn't think this book would go there, but it did, but it stopped there. So it has some Oedipus complex, some darker things in there, but not really. It's just addressed, but not built upon, and it's not plot central. So for the thriller aspect, though, the twist in this book wasn't that fucking interesting. They were predictable, and I was really expecting there to be like a final twist at the end, but it's exactly as I predicted. I almost didn't want to predict it because it was that obvious, but yeah. So that's why the thriller aspect really wasn't that good. Do I like this ending? No, I didn't actually. I was expecting more twists. I didn't want it to be so straightforward, so no. Would I recommend this book? I think... No, I wouldn't. Actually, I wouldn't because there's just nothing about it to recommend. Like, if you want to read a thriller from the perspective of a 12-year-old boy, a bad thriller from the perspective of a 12-year-old boy, then sure, read it. But there's really nothing in here. It's so average that I can't even recommend it. Okay, let's talk Loner by Teddy Wayne. This book has 203 pages and was published 2016. It took me 4 days to finish this one, and I freaking love this book. I know it's 4 stars here. My original rating was 4.5 stars, and I was so close to giving it 5 stars. But as I was writing this journal entry, I couldn't give it 5 stars, but it's a high 4 stars, okay? The concept of this is not that original, though it is the first instance of it that I've read, and maybe that's why I gave this a high rating, but it's about an incel. Nice guy TM. So it's about this character called David who starts his time in Harvard. Yes, Harvard. It's your prototypical I'm a genius and nobody recognizes it guy who then gets obsessed with a girl. So it's very U-coded, but it's also Harvard-coded, and it's also incel and a lot darker. I haven't read You, but like, it's fun. It's a fun fucking book. I loved it so much. I was, oh my god, in awe how Teddy Wayne disappeared into his prose, because not once did I think this is the author talking. No, it was David talking, because David has a particular voice. It's very stilted, girl, I had to like look up a lot of words in this manuscript because he was using big words. I think this book might have like widened my vocabulary. Anyway, David is insufferable, but still so compelling. It's like you want to keep on reading because you can't believe what this guy is thinking, and not in a sensationalist way. It still feels very realistic. He kind of reminds me of a certain incel mass murderer who published a manifesto. I feel like the character was inspired by him, to be honest. And if he was, spot on. The voice is spot on. So this is a book that allows you to interpret. Like, despite the subject matter and despite that David is super insufferable, it doesn't moralize it. In fact, it's so fucking deep in the character's head that even if there's some moralizing, it's so from David's perspective and it's done so well and so convincingly. Oh my god, I'm a huge fan of Teddy Wayne. I think Teddy Wayne focuses on the darker sides of masculinity, which is fascinating to me as a woman because I will never experience those from the perspective of a man. So that's the value of this book to me. Readability, because David has such a stilted way of speaking, such a fancy way of speaking, is 1 star less. But that's just a technicality. It's 5 star in my heart, even though I was too dumb sometimes to understand what he was talking about. The plot is 4 stars. It's not a stellar plot. Really, this book is more about the character than it is about what's going on. Well, it kind of also is about what's going on, but like, don't expect like a marvelous, well strung together, emotionally satisfying plot. It's more about the internality, trust me. I mean, those aspects are good in this book, that's why 4 stars, but it's more about the character. The writing, excellent. Oh, excellent writing. If it wasn't obvious by now, I'm a huge fan of the writing. Excellent voice work, totally believable. Not once was I thrown out and thinking, nobody would think that. Oh, hate read, but not the kind where I think the book is bad, but because I was so fascinated by the character. As such, the character, 5 stars, perfect. Even the side characters were so good. Even like, they're just so in the peripherals, but you can imagine these people as real people because I think the basis of that is the excellent voice work of the main character and the Harvard vibe of it all. Oh, it was so good. David, I think, is taking up English lit, so you can imagine how pretentious everything is, and it's so fun. It's so fun. It's all about class and wealth and high school politics, but like distinctly from the perspective of a guy who reads like he lurks in the incel forums. So he has this frigging red pill way. I don't think the red pill was a thing, but a red pill way of understanding the world. So there's a lot of hierarchy. There's a lot of, well, if I'm friends with you, nobody will hang out with me because that would put me in the lower hierarchy. That would make me a beta, if you will. But it's so fun. Trust me, guys. This book made me realize that literary fiction is not always about lyricism, but also about character building. And this book did it well, if it wasn't obvious. And I would like to read you guys a quote, and it's a long one because that's just how David speaks. It's very run-on sentence. It's a lot of fancy words. So this is very early on in the book where he meets the object of his desire, this woman, Veronica, and he's describing her to us, which, by the way, okay, before I read that, I still have to tell you guys, a lot of people dog on insta-lust and insta-obsession, and I never fully was on board with that because I always thought you can do that well if you know how human brains work. It's not instant sexual attraction and instant connection, they come together. Like, obsession is a inherently interesting topic to me, how somebody can be so focused on something. It doesn't even need to be a person. So this book technically has insta-lust, but done so well. Okay, I'll read it to you guys now. So this is David describing Veronica the first time he sees her. To begin with your flaws, a word I sandwich between petrified scare quotes. On the upper third of your forehead, as if connecting your 2 cerebral hemispheres, a blanche hyphen of a scar, a nose the tiniest bit crooked and long, 2 central incisors that outmuscled their next tooth neighbors. I fucking love it that he started with describing her flaws, so it's like negging. internally. He's internalized the negging philosophy, if you will. Then later on in this same page, he starts describing her beauty. The distant twin mountains of an upper lip under an elegantly concave philtrum, the cheekbones sloping like the handle of a jug, and, most salient to an eye across a room, the hair in a carelessly knotted bun. While I'm reading that, I'm thinking, oh my fucking god, this guy thinks he's Shakespeare, but at the same time, it's not that I think the prose is beautiful, but I'm more marveling at his use of the language, regardless if I think it's good or bad. Obviously, it's not trash prose. It's over the top, but not in a camp way. I can't describe it. It's just done so well. The entire book has this academic, flowery, literary student fucking prose, and it's insufferable, but I can't. I was so fascinated. So good. So, but what made me deduct half a star, or in this case, a full star, again, I still think it's high 4 stars. What made me not give it 5 stars is the ending. I felt like it was rushed. I wished it would have been drawn out, at least emotionally. It didn't feel satisfying to me. I feel like there could have been one more thing. The build-up felt cut short, and then we're already at the point of the highest tension, and then the story is done. It was missing one more thing before the climax. I hope that makes sense. So did I like the ending? I still did. I still did like the ending. Although it was still like, I don't want to change the ending. I just want to draw it out a little bit, flesh it out a bit more, if you will. Would I recommend this book? Fuck yes. Guys, read this. It's so fun. It's such a compulsive, it's a high caliber hate read. A hate read of the highest quality. Please, it's good. This book I'm actually quite excited about. It's Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Basterica. Oof, like, if you Google dark fiction, you will find this book in that list for sure. This is like a cult classic. It was published 2017 and has 209 pages, so it's not that long. This is a high concept book. So the concept of this is, what if humans started eating humans, and it's this entire industrialized thing? It's the cannibalism industrial complex. I've heard that this book was more seen as like an interesting what if the world were like this? Some people view this more as a world building exercise. I wasn't in this for the world building. Again, because the concept is the leading thing that people advertise. I never picked it up. I just picked it up now because I was trying to read wide. I don't think this book can be viewed as a world building one. This book has a lot more to say about human behavior than one would initially think. What I'm trying to say is I didn't regret picking this book up. I gave it 4 stars, but it is a fucking high 4 stars. I have to say. I love this book. I originally deducted half a star, and now I deducted a full star because I think Basterica might not be on a line level as skilled a writer than others are. Granted, this is translated from Spanish, but how should I put it? Her writing is very readable, don't get me wrong. Like, you can read it, but it's very simplistic. Okay, I think I have a way to describe it. Basterica has good ideas, and she has something to say. But when it comes to translating it on paper, her prose is not that good. It's very simple. It worked for this story, mind you. Because I've read another book from her, her writing doesn't give me the impression that it's intentionally simplistic. It's more like she can't do anything else. Even though it's readable, it doesn't read skilled. Does that make sense? Readability is 4 stars. The prose is very choppy and simple, and there are some out there metaphors and similes, but in the end, like, that's not what this book is about. The strength of this book is the concept behind it, and the concept is good and thought out and has something to say about human cruelty. The plot, there isn't really much of a quote-unquote plot in this one. There is, things are happening. I view this book more like, well, it's like I'm touring this world with the main character, Marcus, and I know every destination we arrive at will have something to say. And that's what made this book so interesting to me. So we go to the breeding center, we go to the slaughterhouse, and then we go to many other places that I won't say here. So every one of those scenes had something unique to say about human behavior. And the fact that the prose is so simple, yet the concept so brutal, just added to the effect of the horror. That's why I thought in this book it was good. I was fooled into thinking that Basterica was more of a skilled line level writer than she actually is. That sounds really mean, but that is my opinion. So the writing is 3 stars in that sense. It's not 3 stars because I think she's average. This is a different kind of 3 stars. It's because it's not 4 stars. 4 stars feels too high, although I think that this author is very imaginative. The writing is not that good. It's not 4-star worthy. However, the characters I gave 3.5 stars. I think the characters seem so thought out in a sense that they're meant to represent, I don't know, maybe a philosophical viewpoint toward this system and by extension to our world. This is not a character-centered book to me. This is a very world-centered book. And that was what was fun in this. Like, for example, we have Marcus, who had a perspective that I didn't get before, but now I understand it as something more deliberate because he's very critical of the system from the get-go. And I'm like, why would you start out with somebody in a dystopian novel? Why would you start out with somebody who is already very critical of the system? Isn't a dystopian novel about figuring out that there's something wrong? But now I realize that Marcus doesn't like the system, but he also doesn't do anything about it. So that's the flavor of dystopian character he is. So the main question is, will he do something about it, right? At least that was my original interpretation. And then I got so fucking disappointed by the ending because I did not get it. And then I stumbled on a Reddit thread that explained it so beautiful to me, this glaringly obvious fucking theme that for me didn't emerge from the prose because Basterica is not a very good emotional writer. And that is that Marcus is the type of guy who thinks he's smarter than everybody else. So he has the flavor of an unrecognized genius. So like a guy with his ego a bit wounded, and that's how he views everybody in the world. I didn't even notice that Marcus hated everybody in different ways. So if you think about it that way, if Basterica had pulled a little bit more of that emotion, made it more apparent in the prose, the ending would have made sense to me, but she didn't. So I feel very secure in my 4 stars in this one because before it was like teetering to the 5-star territory. That being said, I can tell that Basterica has a mature imagination. What I mean by that is sometimes high concept books like this, especially if they get popularized and become bestsellers, they usually seem so infantile to me, like psychologically speaking. It's so preachy and so apparent or whatever. I can tell that Basterica is an adult. I don't know if that even makes sense. Just by how this story handles the cruel behaviors. For example, Marcus has this little side thing with a butcher. Her name is Spanel. And they have wonderful gallows humor, which I feel like true gallows humor can only be written by somebody who understands the darkness of the thing that they're making fun of. So it's not sensationalized or anything. It's very appropriate gallows humor. And one quote from that is, Spanel then says to Marcus, "Let them eat me. I'll give them horrible indigestion." Because Spanel is purposefully smoking, drinking, and making her body not palatable, I guess, for when she dies. Which I thought was just delicious gallows humor. It made me laugh in a very dark way. My favorite character in this book was Orlet. Orlet is a huntsman. He's very old money, and he's very arrogant, but he's also very smart. He is so aware of what is wrong with the society and how he's contributing to it, but he just doesn't give a shit. In fact, there is such an awareness, and he has developed a philosophy that I would even think is a sound philosophy for what he's doing, which is he's hunting people. So he orders the head, that's what they call it in the book, for the people that are going to be eaten. He orders the head to be hunted. And he has this fucking... Okay, I'm not going to say any more than that because I want you to read. But in his chapter, he's discussing things with Marcus. And then soon it goes into like, essentially, why are we doing this? Why are humans like this? So it's kind of like a philosophical discussion. And then he tells Marcus, "The human being is complex, and I find the vile acts, contradictions, and sublimities characteristics of our condition astonishing. Our existence would be an exasperating shade of gray if we were all flawless." Ain't that fact? So that's his rationale for eating people. And it kind of makes sense. But I also don't agree. But I kind of agree too. Oh, that's what I mean with a compelling fucking character. Or at least in this case, this is obviously like he has the vibe of a mastermind villain or something, where you identify with the villain's philosophy because it kind of makes sense, but something inside you is saying, but also not really. So that's a version of that trope. I'm not even sure if it's a trope that's done so compellingly in this book. Wonderful. So I was a big fan after finishing, and I was a big fan of Basterica before I read her second book that, spoiler, I didn't rate very well. You know, this book is still very good. I think I might actually get a physical copy because I only read it as an ebook, because you can reread it. It's a rereadable book. I think you will still find new ways to analyze it in your second, third, fourth read. So that's usually a criteria for me to get a physical copy of a book, because I'm very selective with what ends up in my shelf. Let's get to the questions here. Did I like the ending? Even with the new interpretation that I learned about. No. It's still a no, because for me to like it, the entire voice of the book would have to shift, and I think Basterica needed to be a better writer to pull that off. So I didn't like it, because I think more work needed to be done to make it make sense. Would I change the ending? No, but I would have expected it to be done better. Would I recommend this book? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Classic dark fiction. If you haven't read it, read it. Let's talk about Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This is a thriller. It was published 2015 and it's 432 pages long, which is a lot longer than it felt like reading. I gave this 4 stars. This is a good fucking thriller. This is a thriller that is demonstrative of the genre and why I like it. The premise is that it's about 2 sisters who had an older sister who disappeared when she was a teen. And they're kind of figuring out what happened to her. That's all I'm saying, because guys, read it. The first chapter is fucking unhinged. And I heard about this book from Lexi, or Newly Nova, and she mentioned that the opening was insane and that it made her nauseous. And me, the dark fiction lover, was like, ooh. And I have to confirm her observations. The opening chapter, in fucking sane. The parts that were disturbing were fucking disturbing. Ooh, it was so good. The tone was just right for me to get disturbed by this book. It's completely unhinged and fast-paced and so much fun. Everything that I love in a thriller was here. So the prose, readable. The plot, I gave 4 stars, only because I thought 5 stars was too high, but it's a really good plot. The writing, also 4 stars. It is invisible prose. It does kind of recede into the background, but in a good way, you know? So while it recedes into the background, what it's telling is super fucking entertaining, so that's why 4 stars. The characters, I also gave 4 stars, although I don't really get attached to thriller characters. Even though this does have deeper emotional analysis of the characters, usually when I read a thriller, I'm mostly there for the plot and where it goes. I don't expect to be connecting with these characters. And if I do, it's mostly surface level. Because thrillers are so fucking outrageous, right? I feel like for readers to connect with characters, you kind of need a more slower paced plot. You know, and with connect, I mean that you think you know them and that you love them or you hate them, whichever. So I don't expect to find that in thrillers. So 4 stars, because even though this is a thriller, I had like some care. I was still kind of interested what would happen to them. And then the main relationship of this thriller, which is one sister and her husband, was so fucked. I loved it so much. In fact, it's a good starting point to start imagining how such a toxic relationship would look like in a slower narrative. Oh, it would be so good. That is the reason I pick up thrillers, because you read about such relationships in thrillers, and then I go on imagining how I would write it in a slower narrative, which is more there for what I mentioned earlier, for character connection, deep character connection. That's why I also love thrillers. So I love the plot, I love the outrageousness, I love the darkness, and sometimes you find like fucking interesting relationships. So I wrote here, this is on the higher end for thrillers and exemplifies why I love the genre so much, which is what I said. And also mentioned is the emotional angle in this book. The emotional angle is mostly carried by the father who spent his entire life looking for his missing daughter. And this is an excerpt from one of his chapters. Then you smile, and you squeeze my hand, and even in my sleep I understand the truth. No matter what happened to you, no matter what horrors you endured when you were taken away, you will always be my pretty little girl. Especially after knowing what happened and how freaking fucked up it was. Oh my god, I was actually really sad for the dad there. Even Lexi said that. She said she unexpectedly cried because of this book, and I fully get it. I fully get why. Did I like the ending? I did. It was a good thriller ending. The plot came together. There was nothing left unresolved at the climax, and then the denouement actually felt like one. It felt like the dust settling. It's so well paced. I think this would be a book I would point at if I were to say that even though some genre fiction can be formulaic, the formula can be utilized to create something truly beautiful and entertaining. This is one such book. Would I recommend this book? Fuck yes. Like, if you like thrillers, this is one of the good ones. Pick it up. Let's talk Collector by John Fowles. This has 283 pages and it was published 1963, so I think it qualifies as a classic, and I can tell you why this is a classic. I think this is the first iteration of that concept of a man kidnaps a girl to make her fall in love with him. I found this book while watching Frankie's Shelf, and that's how it was pitched to me. It's kind of like the first psychological thriller or something. So there I was with my expectations of what a psychological thriller should be, and I was disappointed. I only gave it 2 stars. Because this is not fucking psychological, or more like, not psychological enough. It was more of a class commentary. I felt like this could have been such a deeply emotional book, or not even emotional, psychological, like mind games and the deterioration of the mental health of the kidnappee. In the end, what was interesting to me was more a part of the biography of the kidnappee than the actual fact that she was kidnapped. It's very readable. It's quite simple prose on purpose. I think John Fowles is English, so there's something quintessentially English about the way it's written. I don't know how to describe it. The plot is 3 stars, although if we were to consider that this was published 1963 and this is the first of its kind, I guess back then it would have been really original, but you can tell that a lot of books was based on this plot, and I assume a lot of books afterwards have removed the class commentary from it, which, in my opinion, is an improvement, so I might look for these books. Anyway, the writing was 3 stars. It's invisible prose 3 stars, not it's bad 3 stars. And the characters were 3 stars. Like, I wanted to give it 2. But while I was skimming through it for this journal entry, I thought, they're not that bad. I just hated where the story went. It's not that they were, badly constructed or anything like that. I just didn't get what I came for. So I wrote here that I was disappointed where the story went. It wasn't a psychological thriller and more a societal class commentary in its core. Emotions aren't delved into deep enough for me to care about the characters beyond surface level. Why I keep on harping on about this class commentary is because this not so well off working class type of dude kidnaps an art student. He's just simpler in his internal monologue. Well, now that I think about it, I think character voice was done here very well. I could distinguish between the kidnapper and the kidnappee, because the kidnappee is, as I said, an art student and an insufferable idealist with a superiority complex. So she feels superior to her kidnapper, which I think would have been an interesting psychological angle. Okay, now that the more I think about it, I get what this book was going for. It just wasn't for me. I don't like these type of narratives where, especially from the perspective of the kidnappee, where she goes on about like, oh my God, I am an idealist and art this, that, and I am morally superior, essentially, to my kidnapper, which is true in this case, but I don't like people who think like this in my day-to-day life. Where I'm not kidnapped. So I couldn't help but be annoyed with her. See, I even have it in my quotes. She says, I am a moral person. I am not ashamed of being moral. I don't want to go into political commentary in this book reviews, but there's something so fucking annoying about that. And then this kidnappee, she has like a is this a spoiler? She has a questionable relationship with somebody in her life who is an older version of herself. Or you could also argue that this older person influenced her. And at some point, she recounts his tenets, if you will. And number 8 of that tenet is, you hate the political business of nationality. You hate everything in politics and art and everything else that is not genuine and deep and necessary. And then that's when this older person became likable to me. I kind of like, these type of people who have such conviction in their beliefs, but it's superior, but you can't help but think they're also kind of smart. There's like a magnetism about them. They almost seem like they're not human. And then even in this story, this older person is depicted as having very, very human flaws that are morally inferior. So I thought that character was more interesting, as I said, than what was actually going on with the kidnapping. For cohesion or for a well-rounded quote section, I also included one from the perspective of the kidnapper. And that is, the way she was looking at me really made me sick, as if I wasn't human hardly. That's obviously the kidnapper assessing how the kidnappee is assessing him. So, in case it wasn't clear, she thinks he's stupid and inferior. And that's the psychological dynamic here. It wasn't for me. I was more interested in her thinking, my God, like she can be this morally superior person, but I wanted her to like really regret being there, to really feel the pain of like, so what this kidnapper did was essentially rob her of any possibility to be something. And she's so young and she had so much potential. She was, she was in university. She was learning things. She could have been somebody. And that's now taken away from her because of this fucking dude who thought she was pretty and wanted to own her. I wanted that conflict. I wanted it to be more interpersonal and not so up in the air in the biography and not so in this frigging political. So you have the personal level and you have the political thing of it all. And I view the personal level as a layer deeper, and it would never go that deep for me. It was never satisfying. So that's why 2 stars. I just wish the story was something else thematically. That being said, did I like the ending? I did. It was a good ending. I could imagine feeling things. Would I recommend this book? No. Because I usually recommend psychological thrillers that I feel like are actually psychological, and this one is not it. As I said, this one is more of a class commentary. If that interests you, then read the book. If you're looking for something psychological or emotional, this is not the book for it. Ooh, let's talk Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valente. This was published 2021 and it's only 103 pages long. It's a quick read and I am very excited because this is one of the 2 5-star reads that I had in this reading period. Readability, like, I'm not even going to get into the ratings here because it's good. It's super readable. It's tonally unique. The concept of this book is, think about Don't Worry, Darling, the movie with Harry Styles and Florence Pugh. I think that's how you pronounce her name. That movie, it has that kind of concept. It's about Sophia, who is so in love with her husband and lives in a perfect world. And the tone of this book is so unique. It's science fiction, but also a little bit fantastical. It's childish, but also mature. It's horror, weirdly enough. It's horror based on imagery and lyricism. It's horror based on vibes alone. I didn't fully get what this story was about because it's, oh my God, filled with so much symbolism. There's something about the way it's written that makes me think it's intricate and intentional. I trust the author to have placed something in there for me to find. And that's why this book has such reread value. I'm probably going to get a physical copy of this. The plot is decidedly simple and not the main draw of this story, I feel like. I mean, I think the concept is interesting, even if it's a bit out there, but it's the vibes. This is the first book I read that I solely read for the vibes and not the plot. The vibes were immaculate. The characters are not really situated in our reality. That becomes very clear, but they are tonally consistent with the vibe. Like it's believable in the microcosm that is this story. So nothing outrageous and nothing that threw me off or anything like that. Funny story how I found this book. I found it by accident, actually, because I was looking for another one, which was Conform, a book that was recently published and I think is a romantasy. I wanted to give it a try. I wanted to give the genre a try, but I mistype. Instead of Conform, I wrote Comfort, and then this came up, and boy, what a happy coincidence. It also looked familiar to me. I think Frankie's Shelf might have mentioned this book. Anyway, I read the blurb and I'm like, I want to read about that. I think the blurb opens with, she was made for him. I'm like, is this dark romance? And then I checked the tag and it said thriller, horror. And I'm like, hell yeah. Anyway, my general impression of this book is, as I said, this is the first book that I read solely for the vibes and just how good the prose is, this dreamlike prose. It creates its own unique tone and world. I didn't understand everything, but truly what made this book 5 stars is the plot twist. I don't want to spoil it, but that is what made this book. That's what catapulted it from 4 to 5 stars for me, is when we finally find out what the fuck is going on. And it's that one chapter that anybody who's read this book will know what I'm talking about. And it's just so fucking beautifully written. Oh my God. What was revealed there and by whomst, that character, I couldn't imagine them at all in my head, but I kind of could. And I couldn't place what version of this character is there. If it's the one that is more classic Middle Ages type, or if it's the more modern kind of naughty type. I couldn't place the motivation, but at the same time, I felt the tenderness of this character. I felt the love coming from it. But at the same time, I would doubt it. Does it really love the way I think it's loving? Or is it being... Oh, God, it's so hard to describe it without spoiling something. But guys, read this. It's a quick read. Oh, it's so good. I would so recommend this. So did I like the ending? I did. Yeah, I did. If you look at this on a plot level, I feel like I should say it again. There's nothing too talking about it. I don't think the concept in itself is super original or had me hooked. It's really just the prose. Would I recommend this book? Fuck yes. Read it. It's so good vibe-wise. I'm sure everybody's imagining something different as they're reading this, but they all have the same vibe. The next book is The Unworthy by Agustina Basterica. This is her recent book. So it was published 2023. I thought it was newer, but apparently not. It has 192 pages, so it's a shorter book. I gave it an overall rating of 3 stars, so it's not as good as Tender as the Flesh. I think I already teased on it in Tender as the Flesh. This book made me realize that Basterica might not be as skilled of a writer as I thought she was. Readability is 3 stars, which it's much of the same as Tender as the Flesh. I didn't like the plot. I loved the concept, but I didn't like the plot. I thought the writing was, oh my God, trying too hard at times. And I thought the characters, they just didn't get me. But let me explain what the concept of this book is. This is set in a post-apocalyptic world where women have gathered into some sort of convent. So I was expecting religious fucking horror. In the style of Agustina Basterica, which is simplistic, more show don't tell. It's very choppy. It's not really emotional. I had faith in her that she would show me this new world and I would still catch what it's about. This story wants to be emotional. And it's just not her strength. I thought it was corny at some point. I think this is also part of the tags in Goodreads. This story is also sapphic. So it's from the perspective of one of the unworthy. That's what they call themselves, and her biography and how she got there. And it's very normal, unoriginal. The world ended and it traumatized me, but the main character is also lesbian, and that's not allowed anymore because I think it's kind of Christian coded, this book. The thing about how this main character crushes is it's so corny. Oh my God, the poeticism, the lyricism feels so forced here. Let me read you guys a quote. I inhaled her fierce and sweet smell, felt her blue paradise enrapture me, envelop me. I was tossed into the abyss. A second one. As Luthia stroked my back,
She spoke in her wolf's voice, her translucent yellow golden voice that was like touching the heart of the sun.
Girl, what the fuck are you talking about? What image are you trying to paint in my head? Because I got nothing. It reads like a jumble of words that were put together because they sound pretty and nothing else. There is no intentionality behind it. I hate it. Like, that shit makes me cringe. It makes me cringe like I did for Haunting Adeline. I don't think it's meant to capture you emotionally. I think it's just meant to demonstrate. I don't know, actually. It does nothing for me. I wished this story would have taken a different route. I wish it would have gone for the disturbing piety and the solemnity. Like, she can lust after the other girls. But the thing is, what I find more interesting is how that affects her day-to-day life there. How the interaction between the unworthies are, and more of the structure of their convent. I don't give a shit who you loved before. Or at least you didn't allow me to give a shit about that because I don't give a shit about the character. I am so mad at this book. I swear. Because I want to like it so bad. Oh my god, I wanted to love this book. But why, oh why, this fucking forced lyricism? Why, oh why, this freaking angle when the concept is right there? What are you doing, Basterica? Let's say the author really wanted to write this type of story, this type of emotional, contemplative, reflective kind of story. I don't think she has the skill for that. I don't think she has the authorial voice for it. This could have been done more. Actually, why did I give it 3 stars? I want to give it 2 stars now. Like, what would have elevated it to 3 stars, ignoring the fact that it's already 3 stars, for me would have been more skill. No forced lyricism. But it doesn't have it. Did I like the ending? No, because I didn't give a shit about anybody in this book at the ending. I will say, though, that the ending was pretty unhinged. It had the tinge of what I was looking for towards the end. Everything in the middle was, you could just throw it away, in my opinion. Would I recommend this book? Also, no. I want this book to be redrafted. I want it to be done again. It could have been so good. Like, religious horror, where the horror is the people and not the religion, is one of my favorite type of horrors. And I was expecting that from this author. And I had high hopes, and I was just so underwhelmed. Next book is The Teacher by Frida McFadden. This one has 379 pages. I listened to it on audiobook, so that was around, oh my god, 9.5 hours. Published fairly recently, 2024. I gave the entire thing 2 stars. I didn't like it very much, and I'll explain why. The reason why I picked up this book is because Frida McFadden is obviously a best-selling author, at least on the thriller side of Book Talk and BookTube. And, you know, I've seen a couple of reviews about this one. And as is usually the case with best-selling authors, they're either really loved or really hated. So I wanted to give it a try, although I'll be honest, my expectations weren't high based on the reviews that I have watched. The thing about this fucking book is, I feel like it's such a fucking derivative of My Dark Vanessa. It feels like a ripoff. I don't know if anybody ever made the connection, but at times while I was listening to the story, I thought, bro, I know which scene from My Dark Vanessa this is inspired from, and you're massacring my poor boy. Oh, it hurt. It hurt on a different level because My Dark Vanessa is one of my all-time favorite books. I have a physical copy of it. I love it so much. And then to read that here in this bastardized version, it hurt. It hurt. I hated it. I guess from that intro, you can already tell what this book is about. It's about a thriller-fied version of a student starting a relationship with a teacher, or a teacher starting a relationship with a student, depending on how you look at it. My Dark Vanessa is the more literary take on it, where it's deeply emotional and you know, it's moving. And this is the thriller version of it. I will give McFadden one thing. Her prose is insanely readable. In fact, you can turn your brain off entirely while reading it because she will repeat the same fucking information to you 50 times just to make sure you get it. So, needless to say, all the criticisms that I've heard about this author have proven to be true, unfortunately. One added thing, though, also, is that the freaking voice for the teen in the audiobook was very whiny. She was whining a lot, and it's very over dramatized. What do I do? And at some point, it became grating. Just being real. The plot was unhinged in a trash way. So the escalation is there. I'm not like, I think McFadden knows how a thriller works. It's just the subject matter and the tone is not equivalent to, I don't know, like Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. So this is really a derivative work, both in the sense of My Dark Vanessa and of a thriller. So it's a trash read. It's a popcorn read. So I guess that could be fun. You don't need to analyze anything about this book. You could just read it and turn your brain off. It's like reality TV a little bit. Although I have to be honest, I don't watch reality TV. Alas, the writing, 1 star. It's not typo-laden type of 1 star. It's just bad frigging. I guess I have to read you guys quotes for it to make sense. And I guess a lot of you have also heard about the common criticisms of this author. You can film a 2-hour video about any book this person has written and it be entirely a hate read, and you would have a lot to pull from. As such, the characters are also 1 star. None of them were engaging. Not that I expected them to be, but like even to move the plot forward, they weren't really that good. So really, I don't have a lot to say. The characters are shallow. I feel like the villain is sensationalized as hell, which is fine because that is the tone of this book. It's supposed to be trash. I also mentioned here that the sex scenes are disturbing, but not really emotionally moving apart from the depiction in of itself. So it does have a couple of sex scenes here and there. But I don't think I was particularly disturbed by it happening because I had My Dark Vanessa in my head. And I was thinking this was a lot worse or better, depending what type of reader you are, in My Dark Vanessa. So it just felt cheap. This entire book, actually, I could describe it. It feels cheap. It feels like a knockoff. But anyway, let me read you guys a couple of quotes. So this is from the teen's perspective. I can't believe I'm about to cry over a turkey sandwich. I feel slightly ridiculous, but I am really, really hungry. Here's the dollar, Vera. An arm brushes past me, holding out a dollar. I hope you guys understand what I mean. Did I like this ending? That's, again, I've had this already in this video, where I didn't like the book, so how can I like the ending? So I'm a bit in between. Let's say, yeah, I kind of did. I feel like it did have a tonal consistency in the sense that this is about to be fucking unhinged. So the ending is just as unhinged. And there was the final plot reveal at the end, which, you know, it's very formulaic thriller-wise. So it was executed, period. I don't have an adjective to follow that up with. I don't know if I should call it bad or good. It was just done. At least it was done. So yes, I like the ending. Would I recommend this book? No. Read My Dark Vanessa. Let's talk about the last book I read for this reading hyperfocus period. And sad to say, it wasn't a good one. It's Story of the Eye by Georges Bataille, I think is how you say the name. It has 103 pages and it was published in 1928. This is the oldest book in this list. And I gave it 1 star, as you guys can see here. I picked this up because I was very curious about the erotic horror subgenre. And for some weird reason, I keep on seeing French authors in there. So I thought, what the hell? I'll pick up a French book. Of course, this is translated in English, but I don't think I have a lot of things to say about this one. It is definitely erotic horror. There is a lot of sex scenes. I think my general impressions really encompass my impression of this book, which was, at first, this book was disturbingly fascinating. Then it just became funny. It's so fucking French in the worst way. What happens when a country is sexually liberated? The weirdos turn to scat. Yeah, this book has a lot of peeing and weird things shoved in all the orifices. Like, it had me for the first few chapters. I was like, ooh, what does this book have to say? And then it lost me very, very quickly. So the prose isn't difficult to read, but at times difficult to understand. As in, I didn't really get what this book was trying to say.
I googled the author because I was just so fucking confused by this book, and apparently he's like a French philosopher or intellectual or something like that. So it could entirely be that I am too dumb to get this, that I'm not philosophically well versed enough to understand the deeper meaning in this text. But honestly, how can I attempt to understand it when these people are constantly peeing at each other every chance they get? It's ridiculous. Oh my god, it's funny. At some point it's just funny. Like, I didn't know what the plot was getting at. I mean, if I were to explain it, it's about these two people who are just sexual deviants. And in the beginning I was getting it, I was getting like, oh, I'm so bored of the world. I just want to submit myself to hedonism. But then it just like went off the rails, in my opinion. Was it about how society views sex, especially in the 1920s? Was it to spite religion? Because there is a scene there with a priest. You can imagine, given the tone and the context of this book, what is done to that priest. There were so many fucking things that I'm like, what is it trying to say? Is it just, like, at some point I just thought, is this just a collection of sexual fantasies of the French? I would have DNF'd this book if it weren't so short, to be honest. So now I can proclaim that I've attempted to read Georges Bataille, and I didn't get it. I would like to read some quotes that I thought were insightful and were trying to say something, which is, in general, people savor the pleasures of the flesh only on condition that they be insipid. So there you have, like, is this character bored? Does this character want to feel something? Does it just want orgasms? Who knows? And then the second one, which I think is in kind of a Dark Night of the Soul type of segment in the story, if it even has a story structure. So the female part of this duo is being described by the male character, who is the POV character. She kept staring into space all the time, looking as if she belonged to something other than the terrestrial world, where almost everything bored her, or if she was still attached to this world, then purely by way of orgasms, which were rare but incomparably more violent than before. I hope you guys understand why I was fooled into thinking this book was about something, or at least I thought I knew what this book was about. Trust me, like, after this, it just becomes weird and funny. Did I like this ending? In a camp way, I kind of did, I have to say. In a camp way, I kind of liked it, so I would say yes. Would I recommend this book? Honestly, I kind of would, because it's just so fucking funny. It's so funny in this horror way, in this aesthetic, erotic horror way. I might actually, I wasn't completely dissuaded from French authors from this. I thought I was, but after filming this, I think I might pick up Desade, just to say I've read that guy. This is so French. I'm kind of intrigued, I have to admit. Oh my god, I finally finished filming this thing. So, those were the 25 books that I read. First of all, it didn't feel like that many books, as I said before. And even after summarizing it all, I felt like I read more, but also less. It's really weird. Being hyper-focused is a weird state of mind, I can tell you. So today is the 12th of November, 2025. That's how long it took me to finish this video. And ever since I started this one, that reading hyper-focus is dead. I've finished 2 books. Which, fair, is still something, and maybe even normal. Some people go months without reading books, like I did before this reading hyperfocus. But if I just compare to, how much time I invested in reading fucking one book after the other, after 3 days, after 2 days, it's insane. You cannot maintain that pace at all. And I'm quite happy in a sense that, I've calmed down quite a bit, because hyperfoci take over your life, and I have shit to do. Not to say that I didn't enjoy reading wide. I do not regret the books that I picked up. In fact, I was so happy that I was that freaking greedy for new experiences that I branched out from my usual preference. I would have never picked up Tender as the Flesh. I would have never picked up a YA novel. I would have never picked up Spare. There are so many books in there that weren't up my alley, but I decided to give a read. Granted, I left out the DNFs, so, you know, I tried a couple of fantasy books. They just weren't for me. I'm going to try again. There has to be a fantasy out there that I like, just because I want to prove myself wrong with my, some would argue, baseless hate towards the genre. But there has to be a good fantasy and a good romantasy that is fitting to my tastes, which is why it's so limited. Every time I ask for a good fantasy, they recommend me a very classical fantasy, and I know for a fact that I don't like that type of thing. But what I'm gonna do from this point on is I will update you guys every time I fill out a double page in my book journey trackers. So this page was already more than halfway through. That's Story of the Eye. That is the last thing I read. The next video is probably going to be a lot shorter since, you know, there's only 2 here and then I have this. But as I was saying, every time I fill out one of these double pages, I'm going to update you guys on the books that I've read. That being said, I hope you found a book that you liked. I hope you found a book where we agree on. And I also hope you found a book where we severely disagree on and we can battle in the comments. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.